Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. All right, cool. So this is like a hearing that happened 3 days ago. So it's pretty recent. I haven't seen it yet, so watching it for my first time. It's titled House Democratic Leaders Hold Hearing on Fair Elections and Voting Rights. All right, here we go.
Witnesses today will walk us through these dangers, and we will hear from them shortly. But before we dive in, I want to frame the larger conversation. The Broward County constituents that I talk to every day share one single unifying concern. How are they going to pay their bills? From gas, groceries, rent, and health insurance, life is just too damn expensive. They can't get ahead, no matter how hard they try. And because Republicans have no answers to address the surging cost of living, they join in with Donald Trump to focus on rigging the election rules. That's why Trump just blindsided a good and bipartisan piece of legislation that can address our neighbors' concerns about housing costs by refusing to sign the 21st Century Road to Housing bill and throwing a tantrum. And it's fitting that he's holding it hostage for an elections bill that would address a non-existent problem by making it harder for tens of millions of Americans to vote. And it's Trump's broader assault on America's election security that we'll focus on today. Like any public infrastructure, our local ballot boxes need upkeep and security funding to ensure a free and fair process. Despite pleas for help from election officials, Republicans in Congress are starving them of the resources they need, slashing last year's already insufficient allocation by 2/3 down to a measly $15 million for the whole country. Trump wasted that much on a no-bid contract to repaint the reflecting pool. And just as artificial intelligence is unleashed, Trump has unraveled cybersecurity efforts and coordination between CISA, Homeland Security, and local election officials. At the same time, Trump wants to usurp states and local election experts to make it harder for minorities and low-income parents to cast a ballot. He's pushed unconstitutional voter ID, mail-in ballot and voting system rules that are being challenged in courts, and partisan Republicans on the Supreme Court have systematically gutted the Voting Rights Act and ignored voter-backed anti-gerrymandering laws, allowing Republican governors in states like mine to carve up communities. Of course, none of that helps our constituents pay their bills or see a doctor. But if Trump can't convince the American people to vote for his failed agenda, he's more than happy to break the rules to suppress their vote. And Trump's persistent election lies provide the distraction and cover-up he needs to keep up his cascade of corruption so he and his cronies can enrich themselves by the billions. And Americans get it. My Broward County neighbors know that Trump's Qatari jet, gilded ballrooms, and pay-to-play pardons don't help any of them pay their mortgage or their rent. They know that when Trump creates a $2 billion slush fund for January 6th rioters, Social Security doesn't get more solid. Everyone outside the president's cult can see the obvious connection between these high prices and all his rabid corruption and voter fraud conspiracies. But if anyone is unclear about it, we're going to clear it up today. So thank you again for joining us. And now I'll hand it off to our Democratic leader and the next Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much to Steering and Policy Co-Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Let me also thank our Steering and Policy Co-Chairs Robin Kelly and Annette Barragan for once again convening us, particularly on this incredibly important subject around election integrity and continuing to lean in on behalf of the people of the United States of America in our 250th year. Let me also thank Ranking Member Joe Morelli, who has been doing a tremendous job leading the charge to ensure that the principle of free and fair elections in the United States of America is uplifted and validated as we approach the all-important midterm elections where it's the American people who should have the ability, in an unfettered way, to decide who is in the majority in the House and in the Senate, and who serves them in public office all across the United States of America. I'm thankful to our extraordinary panel of witnesses, Michael, Maya, Gretchen, and Robert, for your presence here today, your leadership, and for sharing your insight and wisdom with the American people here on Capitol Hill, and for all that you are doing to protect the integrity of our elections as we move forward. Donald Trump and Republicans, who have been in complete control of government since January of 2025, have been a complete and total failure. Donald Trump and Republicans promised to lower costs on day one, but costs haven't gone down, costs have gone up in the United States of America. Life has become more expensive. Donald Trump and Republicans promised to love and cherish Medicaid, and then turned around and enacted the One Big Ugly Bill, which included the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripping health care away from millions of Americans all across the country, including in rural America. Donald Trump and Republicans promised not to start wars in the Middle East, but to stop them. And then turned around and launched a reckless and costly war of choice, Operation Epic Failure, that has left the American people less secure, left Iran stronger than they were before the war, and has dramatically increased gas prices and food prices, who are already suffocating in the Trump Republican economy. Donald Trump and Republicans have failed the American people, which is why they've concluded that the only way that they can win in November is to cheat. And that's so inconsistent with who we are as Americans. But Donald Trump, of course, has shown openly his willingness to challenge the principle of free and fair elections here in the United States of America. Has continued to spread lies about the 2020 and 2024 presidential elections. He's continued to promote reckless conspiracy theories. And he, of course, has continued to hire in high levels of governmental office election deniers and January 6th violent insurrectionists. This is all leading to an attack on the upcoming 2026 elections. And he will use every weapon at his disposal connected to the federal government to sow distrust and destroy the integrity of our elections, which is why, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans, the effort to make sure that there are free and fair elections in the United States of America as the central tenet of representative democracy is so important. That's why this hearing is so important. That's why this effort is so important, particularly in the face of the Supreme Court recklessly gutting the Voting Rights Act and setting in motion Jim Crow-like tactics, hiding in plain sight throughout the Deep South. America deserves better. Our democracy deserves better. The children and their future in representative democracy deserve better. And so we stand ready to protect our elections, to ensure that it's the American people, not Donald Trump and his corrupt tactics, are the ones who determine who gets to serve them in Congress and in public office across the land. So let me thank again our witnesses. We look forward to your testimony. And it's now my honor to yield to a fellow New Yorker, upstate New York, but a tremendous advocate for the people of the Empire State and all across the country, particularly as it relates to election integrity, the ranking member and future chair of the House Administration Committee, my friend, Joe Morelli.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leader. It's a privilege to be here with the steering and policy hearing on protecting American democracy. And I want to thank co-chairs Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Robin Kelly and Annette Barragan for convening us, for their leadership and always for their friendship. Thank all my other colleagues who are here as well for your partnership on so many important issues. And to the folks who've been here to testify, thank you for your leadership and all you do, certainly in this moment, but every moment, to defend democracy. And I want to thank Hakeem Jeffries. His leadership, first of all, of our caucus, has provided an indispensable check on this administration on all of the things that they've done to break, shatter protocols, to violate the Constitution, to violate American law. And he has kept us together, kept us pointed in the right direction, to remind us that the main thing is the main thing. We've got to make that the main thing, and that's addressing the needs of the American people. And I want to thank him for his strong support and engagement on the whole issue of protecting American democracy in these elections. We communicate daily on this, and he continues to remind us how vital this is. And truly, the health of the democracy is the security of our elections, the strength of public trust in government. Each of these are not only critical, but they're necessary elements and components of this 250-year experiment that we ironically celebrate this year with President Trump as the person in the White House. But there is nothing, in my view, more urgent in this moment than protecting American democracy, which is why this gathering today is, among many that we're hearing, so important. And just to remind people the threats we face, the president and his allies want to take over this election. They make it clear. As I think Leader Jeffries often says, the president says the quiet part out loud. I guess we can at least give him credit for that. Whether it's the Save America Act, which would disrupt election administration, keep millions of eligible voters away from the polls, force states to hand over private personal voter data to DHS. He has issued illegal executive orders, and thank you to the courts for stepping in appropriately, but that would block access again to the ballot for millions of Americans, including an attempt to eviscerate vote by mail, as many of us know, particularly in states out west, is the primary method by which Americans in the millions cast their votes, and have cast it that way for decades. Yesterday, as we all know here, impulsively canceling a signing ceremony about something that had nothing to do with elections to insert himself into and try to once again leverage the United States Senate on the block Save America Act. And his tantrum proves one thing. He would rather see Americans on the street than at the ballot box. It's true. He would rather see people on the streets than at the ballot box because he fears the judgment of the American people. So when you fear the answer, I guess you do everything you can to avoid the answer. And the situation and the threats grow much more dire. He has, and people around him have continued to muse about deploying the military or law enforcement. He has indicated his regret for not calling out the National Guard in the advent of the 2020 election. And we find ourselves in a moment where democracy's traditional defenders are not. They are now threats. The Department of Justice is a threat. The Department of Homeland Security, which has dismantled its election security apparatus, is a threat. The administration has defunded and gutted Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency and its support for election administrators around the country. And now with the Louisiana versus Calais, the Supreme Court has demolished yet another pillar of the Voting Rights Act that upholds our multiracial democracy, a law that for nearly 6 decades, with broad bipartisan support over the years, is now shredded by this Supreme Court. So in the face of all this, the committee that I have the privilege of leading has jurisdiction over federal elections. We've undertaken this assessment of the threats, how House Democrats and pro-democracy allies can stand up and stand together, push back against these threats. Our planned targeted responses include litigation, effective community organization and mobilization, and promoting early voting. Everybody in America should vote at the first moment that they have. I have a friend back home who goes early voting, 6 a.m. it opens, 6:01, he's the first person to vote. He always says to me, just in case I get hit by a bus, I want my vote to count. Now that's the kind of democracy devotion that we need by all Americans. So we're going to continue to work with our partners and advocates who are here, and thank you, and protect American elections. Failure, quite simply, is not an option. It cannot be. And because of the corruption, the culture of corruption of Republicans in Washington have real costs, as my friend Chairman Wasserman Schultz outlined. Americans are struggling to afford gas and groceries. The president wastes millions on vanity projects. He sends taxpayer money to billionaire donors while simultaneously cutting their taxes, adding to the federal debt, and then requiring people who need nutritional assistance or health insurance to fill out more paperwork and more certifications. Protecting our democracy doesn't end with protecting just the elections. We have to restore American trust. And so fundamentally, reforming our courts, reforming the Congress, reforming our electoral system, reforming the...
Hey, what's up, everyone? We're watching the opening statements for this hearing that happened the other day regarding Donald Trump's unconstitutional Save the Maggot Act. So thanks for tuning in and sharing your opinions. What's up, everyone? What's up, Joanne? How's it going? What's up, Amber Leslie? What up? Well, it looks like we got some MAGA cult members in the house, but that's okay. At least they can finally see the truth.
The executive branch, all things that we are collectively doing, getting dark money out of our politics and holding ourselves accountable. So it's a large project and a necessary one. I'm grateful to be working with everyone on this. And so I'm grateful to the panelists here look forward to hearing from them. So thank you so much.
Thank you to Ranking Member Morelli for all of your work. Thank you to the leader and my co-chairs for putting this hearing together. It's a very timely hearing.
Oh, just kicking it. I got a new batch of some medicinal hippie lettuce. So I got this to smoke on during the hearing. This hearing's about an hour and 48 minutes long. We're 15 minutes into it, so there's about an hour and 30 minutes left to go. I just made a coffee right now. When I went to the dispensary, they gave me this edible right here. It's a little Rice Krispie treat, 50 milligram. So at some point during the hearing, I'm gonna eat this. Hopefully it doesn't knock me out.
I want to thank all the witnesses that are here today as well for your expertise, your advice, your guidance, for all that you do to keep our elections free and fair. Our democracy is under attack, and Donald Trump will stop at nothing to tamper with our elections. One of the concerns I hear a lot is from people worried about even going to the ballot box and whether there's going to be ICE officials, whether there's going to be law enforcement there. That concern is real, and that, I think, is intended to cause people not to go to the ballot box. And then we're hearing threats of maybe we won't deliver your mail-in ballot unless states give us voter lists. So this is an ongoing attack, and we, of course, I know yesterday the president refused to sign the housing bill because he's demanding this dangerous SAVE Act bill get passed by the Congress, which would make it harder for Americans to vote. And so the fight for democracy and justice is far from over.
Hey, what's up, JFO? How's it going?
And we look forward to hearing from experts like yourselves and advocates who can advise us on the best ways to fight back and really conveying those to our constituents who are so concerned about making sure that they have their ability to vote and that it's not going to be disrupted. And so with that, I get to introduce the first witness here today. It's my honor to introduce Michael Wallman, a constitutional lawyer, a writer, and a leading voice on American democracy. President and CEO of the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU School of Law. Michael.
Hey, what's up, Ed, New York? I'm going to take a wild guess that you get all your information from Truth Social and state regime media, otherwise known as Fox News.
Center since 2005. He also served.
But that's okay, Ed. Glad you're here so you can finally see the truth.
Director of speechwriting for President Bill Clinton and was responsible for nearly 2,000 speeches, including 4 State of the Unions and 2 inaugural addresses. More recently, Michael served as a member of the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States. You may recognize Michael from his many TV and radio appearances or from his articles published in the New York Times and the Washington Post. You may also know him as the author of numerous books, such as The Fight to Vote, which details the history of our struggle to secure voting rights for all Americans. Michael, I want to thank you for your continuous work to protect our right to vote, making sure our voices are heard. And with that, you are now recognized.
Thank you so much, Representative Barragan. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, Ranking Member Morelli, Chair Wasserman Schultz, and all of you on this committee for having this important conversation. The vote is the heart of democracy. It is utterly vital that we have a free and fair and secure.
Did you guys see Donald Trump's failed state fair? Oh man, what a disaster. Another grift by the con man. Just like the reflecting pool and everything else he touches.
And as has been said, and as you know, President Trump and his administration have a concerted campaign underway to undermine the election. It's important to understand that has never happened before in American history. What I want to report to you today, with everything going on, is we know what this strategy is, and now there is clear a counter strategy, protections by state and county officials, by voting rights groups and civil society groups, by law enforcement that act.
All right, let's kick this stream up a notch. If there's any smokers in the house, now's the time to bust out your hippie lettuce and twist to exist. All right, here we go. Bonglo number 1 for this hearing. Oh yeah, that was a good one. Oh yeah, slip into a Slim Jim.
Protect voters and ensure that we can have the kind of election we want to have. And all of you have a critical role that you are playing and can continue to play going forward. What are the strategies? We know they're trying to abuse executive power. Breaking news earlier today, a federal court blocked the most recent executive order by President Trump. This is the one on vote by mail. They made clear.
Nah, there hasn't been any riots at all since it's all made up right-wing propaganda.
Have no role under the Constitution in administering elections. Congress obviously is being enlisted as well, and you all have been the leaders in the fight against the egregious SAVE Act. We're really grateful for it. Nobody's going to want to make predictions, but we know that it has been blocked so far in the Senate. We know they are weaponizing the Department of Justice. They have demanded.
No, ain't nobody going out to riot. What's going to happen is the blue wave tsunami is going to continue rolling, and all these MAGA cult member politicians are all going to be voted out. And then we're going to take back the House and the Senate, and Donald Trump's going to be impeached, removed, and imprisoned along with his whole incompetent cabinet. And then we're going to go into all the red states and clean them up, bring back law and order. And all the MAGA cult members that don't comply are going to get 40 hours of community service or go back to Jonestown.
Voter rolls from 48 of the states, and now 9 courts, 9-0, have ruled that this is illegal, that there is no legal justification for this, and states are saying no. We've heard about the defunding and the pulling the support off the beat for election officials. Many people, including former security officials and law enforcement and many others, are stepping up to help county and state and local election officials deal with security threats and deal with all the kinds of threats there are. Now, I don't want to be naive. There continue to be things we're particularly worried about. We'll hear about them. The new and emerging attacks by the FBI on voter registration groups in particular, as we saw in Ohio, is of deep concern. The risk that has not happened yet of the use of ICE or troops or other law enforcement at the polls is also of great concern, though I will point out emphatically, and we all need to remember, that is entirely illegal. In every way, we believe courts will step up should that happen. But all of that points to what our role and your role can be. We need to be encouraging and assuring people that their vote will be secure. We need to have, in effect, what happened in Minneapolis. We need neighbors helping neighbors, a civic mobilization to protect the vote so that people who are scared, who have reason to be scared, in fact, can vote early, can vote with support from their fellow citizens. I'll mention one other thing. If we do all those things, we can have a free and fair and secure election, and voters will have their say. As has been said by Representative Morelli, we think it's utterly vital that the response to this moment be reforms and changes in how our system works so we don't.
Yeah, that talking narrative that these maggots push out there about this like violence and this and that, it's a bunch of hogwash. It's a bunch of just right-wing propaganda that they push out there.
Fight these kinds of defensive trench battles over and over again. Throughout American history, it is after periods of abuse, after scandal, after corruption, that's when reform happens. It doesn't always happen, but that is when it happens. And you all may have an opportunity to be part of that. You know what kinds of reforms you're talking about as relates to corruption, a critical issue to so many voters, banning partisan gerrymandering, dealing with dark money, new protections for voting rights and against discrimination in voting. And as leader.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Martin Felix? How's it going? Hope you're having a good Sunday so far. What's up, everyone?
Said, dealing with the Supreme Court, we recommend term limits at the very least as one of the reforms. This can be a significant moment, not to have to fight this over and over again, but to make sure that the democracy we all care about, that we cherish, that we love, is stronger coming out of this moment than before. Thank you for holding this hearing.
CEO of Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, a coalition of over 240 national organizations fighting to protect, defend, and expand the rights of every person in the United States, a national leader on civil rights and economic justice. Ms. Wiley has served in numerous high-level positions, both inside and outside government. To name just a few, she served as the first Black Women Counsel to the mayor of the city of New York, a faculty member and senior vice president of the New School University, and as a litigator at the ACLU, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and in the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York. Thank you, Ms. Wiley, for all of your important work and for joining us today.
I did push this one. Thank you for having me. And I really want to thank our co-chairs. I want to thank our leader.
What's up, Anonymous? That's hilarious. Dookie Don for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't even trust Donald Trump picking up my dog poop. But yeah. Yeah, I think Donald Trump's like the only president that never had like a first dog. Like all the presidents had dogs. I just don't think animals like Trump. Like they feel his energy, his toxic energy. They don't want to be around him.
Our ranking member, but also every single member of this committee and all of the work that it represents, because we are the ones we've been waiting for. Because for such a time as these, we know that it is a democracy that has always been one we have had to fight, to protect, and to perfect. And I say this with my dear colleague, Michael, because the Leadership Conference on for Civil and Human Rights has been here for 76 years fighting this fight. And I think it is important to note that the challenges I'm about to share.
Hey, Brandon, you're skating on thin ice on a hot day. You're over there spreading misinformation, disinformation.
Are not necessarily new, but the degree, the tenor, the abuse, and the unlawfulness, and its level and depth is. And I say that because this isn't just a return, as we sometimes say, to Jim Crow. It is actually a return to a fight about whether the civil rights amendments of our United States Constitution are going to stand. And that is a substantial fight. But here I want to share with you a bit of what we're seeing out of the coalition.
I mean, your name is Pussyfoot Productions, so I'm pretty sure you just smelled yourself.
We're doing about it and what we can continue to do about it. Everything that Michael has said, I'm not going to repeat because I'm just going to say that is consistent with the position of the coalition of which the Brennan Center is a member. What I think we need to confront is a couple of very, very clear threats. We have engaged in a landscaping of what our coalition is doing. We have over 240 members. We have 84 national organizations mapped in the data I'm about to share.
Hey, what's up, Martin? Thanks for bringing up that point. That it's funny because all these MAGA cult members automatically think that somebody with a brain is against their orange god and is automatically a Democrat. It's like, yo, you don't even need to be in politics to realize Donald Trump's a piece of shit. Like, all you got to do is just go to the gas station.
Number one is the coalition is not backing down, and it's not slowing down, it is not stopping, and it is not turning around. But what comes out of it is a very clear picture of several important things we've already heard. Major threats include polling place closures, include the reduction in early voting, include staff shortages in election offices, include threats and harassment to those election administrators. And it also includes things like language access. Just want to make this point, 31% of Asians, millions of our Latino voters, Native American population experiencing both language and distances to polls. And as we know, people with disabilities, the elderly, and all manner of people rely on mail-in voting, ballot drop boxes. They're lawful, they're effective, and they support turnout. So I say that, but in addition, the gerrymandering has come up and mis and disinformation as major challenges at a level unseen in recent memory for all the reasons that Michael has just shared. And part of what is happening now.
Like, as a matter of fact, like 70% of the MAGA cult members from last year have jumped ship already. Like, even they know Donald Trump is just a failed fake president. A lot of them finally stopped drinking the Kool-Aid. You know, there's a lot of reformed maggots out there.
Is both
yeah, Donald Trump's approval rating's like 20%. Blue wave tsunami coming through.
To disinformation. One example, just one, but that we're hearing from many places is a Black man, 70 years old in Louisiana, asking at a community meeting whether after the Calais decision, he still has a right to vote.
No, I don't like Trump, and millions of other people don't like Trump because he's a corrupt pedo protector at the highest degree. And he's violating everyone's civil rights, constitutional rights, racially profiling people, kidnapping people, throwing them in concentration camps, feeding them moldy bread and maggots, sending them to countries they've never been before. He's over there murdering Alex Preddy and Renee Good. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Starting unlawful wars, tariffs. You know, where's the Doge check at?
Is real, it's significant, and it actually, this is a different kind of threat than even whether the polling site is open or the ballot box is available, right? Not because those are they're not, they're significant. But the very fact that people are wondering if their rights are in place is a consequence of the Calais decision, and one that requires the kinds of activity.
Trump's net worth has increased $10 billion since he took office. Probably more. He's just looting and terrorizing the country and the whole world. Stole all of Venezuela's oil.
That this coalition undertakes every day, and that this group of leaders here has so much opportunity to help us confront collectively. I'll say this other thing. It's very clear where and how the coalition is seeing the threats as a priority. So, for example, greatest coverage for the coalition is not going to surprise you. But we are showing up in literally 28 states. It's in a very deep level. But it is also clear that folks are calling out Florida, Texas, North Carolina, Michigan, Arizona, and Wisconsin as real, clear, and present danger for voters. Those are not the only places, but just to say that's one thing we're hearing out of our data. And the other is this, and I think this is extremely important to note. Our members are all in. They're not slowing down, they're not backing down. They're doing it with less resources than they've ever had before, despite the degree of threat. And we're seeing in our data, 44% of our member organizations are doing what they're doing on 25% of the budget. So when we consider the incredible amount of
Hey, what's up, Her Descartes?
the breadth of that work, when we see the challenges to the ability to do that, that is also something we have to confront together because it is a turnout issue. Turnout for us is a nonpartisan issue. We don't care if you're a rural community or urban community. We don't care and tell people who to vote for or whether to vote. This impacts every voter. This is about the ability of our people to deliver a pink slip or a hiring offer to those leaders who are going to decide the things that our folks want to hear about and care about, which is they don't just want to be told about whether or not they have a right to vote. They want to be told about whether that vote is going to solve their problems. And as we have already heard, the places that are under attack, it's because communities are asking for Medicaid. It is because communities are asking about SNAP benefits. It is because communities are asking about whether their hospitals are going to stay open and whether or not women and children are going to die for lack of health care. And Head Start is another one. So when we talk about the corruption that we're seeing, that we have heard about, the fact that we're seeing $75 billion in 1 year go to ICE to take our rights, at the same time that we're taking $75 billion out of the healthcare system, it is clear why voters want to have a say in who leads them. And this is why we see the attacks on the very existence of our work, on our organizations, from Southern Poverty Law Center to the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. And while part of our fight has been to even defend the rights to simply do the work to educate, to engage, to support, and to empower. But we won't stop, and we know you won't, and this is work we do together.
Thank you to our witnesses and everyone joining us for today's important discussion. As co-chair of the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, I'm proud to convene and partake in this hearing focused on safeguarding our nation's elections and strengthening the foundation of our democracy. Free, fair, and secure elections are the foundation of our democratic system. Americans must be able to cast their ballots with confidence, knowing that elections are protected from interference, intimidation, and manipulation. Election security is more than voting machines. It requires protecting election workers, defending against foreign influence, maintaining strong cybersecurity systems, and ensuring that state and local election officials have the resources they need to do their jobs. Unfortunately, recent actions by the Trump administration have raised serious concerns about our nation's election security infrastructure, election security grants, critical funding that helps states modernize voting systems, and strengthen cybersecurity. They have been significantly reduced. While Congress appropriated $45 million for election security grants in fiscal year 2026, only $15 million was ultimately allocated. At the same time, key election security personnel with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, were placed on administrative leave, weakening federal support for state and local election officials and reducing our ability to respond to threats from foreign adversaries and other bad actors. Despite these challenges, election officials across the country continue to work tirelessly to uphold the integrity of our elections and maintain public trust in the democratic process. Today's hearing is an opportunity to examine these threats, learn from experts on the front lines of election administration, and discuss how Congress can strengthen.
Like he's already failed many times with this Save the Maggot Act. And he keeps on trying and trying, but it ain't going to happen. But yeah, just like Spencer Pratt, he took a hike. Like anything Donald Trump endorses is just done for.
Elections for the
He has no credibility. He's on his way to becoming a lame duck president come midterms.
With that, I'm honored to introduce our next witness, Gretchen Ronmeyer. Gretchen has served as Arlington's County General Registrar and Director of Elections since 2019 and brings more than 2 decades of election administration experience, beginning as a poll worker in Texas at age 18. She has held numerous leadership roles in election administration, including serving as co-chair of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Government's Election Officials Technical Committee.
Many have actually. Viktor Orban, the dictator from Hungary, that J.D. Vance and Trump were meat riding all the way to the end of his demise. There were some people in Texas that he endorsed that lost. Florida, just to name a few. I mean, the blue wave's already happening. We got Georgia, Texas, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. All those states are tired of Trump's crap.
And as an active member of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia. Ms. Ronmeyer.
We got Tallarico in Texas. We got John Ossoff in Georgia.
Being here today, and we look forward to your testimony.
We got Ma'am Danny stand over there in New York.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm honored to represent more than 10,000 local election administrators across the United States. Together, we take on an enormous task of mobilizing the largest civilian workforce in support of democracy in the world. I'm referring to the roughly 1 million poll workers who will volunteer to serve their community and let their neighbors' voices be heard on November 3rd. They speak to the heart of our nation, not just having the right to vote, but that the willingness of ordinary citizens to make that vote possible. I've been asked to speak about threats to our democracy, and I'd like to start there.
Oh yeah, Ed is from New York, so yeah, I bet everything's improving, but you don't want to admit it. Ma'am Danny's doing a great job.
Its civic backbone of our election system is under strain in ways that aren't always visible. 40% of election administrators in Connecticut have retired in the last 5 years. 4 weeks ago, my 82-year-old mother was recruited to run a precinct in Texas because there simply weren't enough other workers available. And just this month, a jurisdiction in Virginia lost 2 of its 3 staff right as early voting has begun. These are not isolated stories. They reflect a nationwide challenge in recruiting and retaining election workers. The reason is simple. Elections are becoming more complex and the environment more scrutinized. Since 2019, my office has implemented sweeping changes, such as no excuse absentee voting, early voting,
Well, the midterms it is gonna be a blue wave tsunami in the midterms. That's why Donald Trump and MAGA grinder Mike Johnson are over there trying their hardest to rig the elections. Hence the Save the Maggot Act, which is just going to be a failure. Just like everything else Trump touches. And it's illegal and unconstitutional, violates the 10th Amendment.
automatic voter registration,
No poll tax.
ballot curing, drop boxes, post-election audits, ranked choice voting, and more. Every one of these changes adds processes, time, training, and cost. 10 years ago, an election might cost $70,000 to run in Arlington. The special election that I just ran in April cost $250,000. That's a 250% increase in the last decade. At the same time, funding hasn't kept pace. In the 17 years I've been with Arlington, our office has received $130,000.
Hey, what's up, madam? Good to see you. Hope you're having a good weekend so far.
Federal funding. Most of this, $123,000, was from the CARES Act in 2020. $90,000 of that was spent on one-time funds on envelopes and postage for mail ballots that November. It was the support we needed that year, and I'm grateful that Congress recognized the need. Compounding this complexity is the growing role of litigation. Court decisions now force changes in the middle of elections, creating uncertainty for administrators and voters alike. And voters are paying attention, but not always in a way that's helpful. National headlines can create confusion at the local level. For example, this spring, voters
I mean, if anything, if Trump's not a foreign agent, Melania probably could be. You know, I mean, she had ties to like the Trumpstein class, Jeffrey Epstein, and all that, and Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, her dad was like that Maxwell guy. They were like triple agents for like Mossad and the KGB. She came over here on something called like an Einstein visa, but she ain't no Einstein. Her movie failed. And the director of her movie is all up in the Epstein files. I forget his name. It's like Ratcliffe or something like that.
Confusion about voter ID requirements in Virginia because of conversations about the SAVE Act, even though our rules in Virginia haven't changed.
Yeah, Melania could be like one of those honeypots.
Administrators have one goal: to serve voters and deliver free, fair, and secure elections. I am appointed. I do not represent a political party, and my role is to implement your policies and help voters navigate
That's funny. Malaria Trump.
the process with confidence. So how can Congress help? First, invest in all voters. Invest in their recruitment, training, and compensation. And you can do this by things like passing the Poll Worker Tax Credit Act to support the workforce. Making the $200 stipend that poll workers receive on election day tax exempt could increase recruitment, but also reduce the administrative cost of hiring these workers that only work 1 or 2 days a year. Second, provide dedicated, predictable funding for election technology with a local spend requirement. Right now, limited certified options are driving up costs and making it harder to meet security requirements. Congress needs to support the EAC's work, and communities need your support for getting the best election technology into the hands of America's voters. Third, continue conversations like this and engage directly with your local election offices. Seeing their work firsthand can make a difference, and they'd love to tell you about their creative solutions for tackling these problems. Thank you for your time today and for your commitment to supporting.
Okay, Ed, New York. Fair enough. Pocahontas. Since I say Malaria Trump, you can say Pocahontas. That's fine.
Chrissy.
Thank you so much, Ms. Reinmeyer. And now
But by the way, what's her name? What's that senator's name that they call Pocahontas now? I forget her name now. Shit. But anyways, she's more patriotic than all these MAGAs put together.
to introduce someone who I think probably doesn't need an introduction for many of us, and that's Robert Reiner, whose election credentials are extraordinary. He's currently the director of the Voting Rights Project at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and previously served as senior counsel in the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. He also clerked for the influential...
It's a name that the maggots gave this senator because she's going after, because she speaks truth, so they're afraid of her. She's a senator. Damn, I can't remember her name now. Oh yeah, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, she's solid. She's a good politician. She's definitely way more patriotic than any of these maggots can ever be.
Friendly and the voting rights legend Justice Thurgood Marshall. Mr. Warren, can you share what you see as the threat landscape for elections right now? And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Wasserman Schultz, Ranking Member Morelli, and members of this.
Pete Hegseth is nothing but a loser drunk. Pete Kegsworth needs to check himself into rehab.
Your focus on the threats to our elections is timely and it's vital. I think we're at a hair on fire moment right now. The Trump administration is systematically undermining every institution that protects our electoral institutions. Now, let me be clear. Our elections are safe and they're reliable, and they will remain that way. But the president's statements, his incessant attacks on the integrity and the safety of our elections is creating confusion and distrust. And with the new head of the Office of National Intelligence, we're going to see those attacks escalating with regard to foreign influence. Beyond that, we've seen subpoenas, investigations, and threats against election officials and voting rights advocates. We've seen teasers regarding ICE agents and military at the polls, as well as seizure of ballots and voting machines. We've seen efforts to restrict mail-in voting. What is going on, in my view, is that the Trump administration is trying to create chaos and then use the chaos that it creates as a reason not to respect the results of our elections. And we've brought a number of lawsuits to counter this in the Lawyers Committee, but litigation is not by itself a solution. And that's why we call upon a broad coalition, the Election Protection Coalition. It unites more than 300 national and state level groups to ensure that voters can cast their ballots and have them counted. It's the largest nonpartisan voter protection program in the country.
Hey, what up, Amber Leslie? Yeah, that reminds me, for everyone in the chat that never has and never will drink the Kool-Aid, feel free to pat yourselves on the backs and give yourselves a round of applause for having a brain, a heart, a soul, and a spine. And for all you MAGA cult members out there, there's help. That's why we're here. We're here to show you guys the truth, get you guys out of your Stockholm syndrome, to get you on your way to recovery from being in the cult.
Center is our hotline, 866 our vote, a year-round, nationwide, nonpartisan, multilingual helpline. We receive reports through that hotline. We work with public officials to solve the problem. And if need be, we sue. Among the issues, we've seen a rise in voter intimidation from 5% of the calls received in 2025 to 10% this year. We're developing rapid response plans to deal with that by both intimidation, by both public and private actors. And we're seeking to prepare ourselves and public officials. We'll be mapping state violence by militias across the country, and we'll coordinate closely throughout the year, share resources to.
Pete Kegsbreth and Trump bombed a school full of children. They killed like 300 kids. And they're executing people with like Tomahawk missiles, innocent fishermen out of the waters in the Caribbean.
A rapid response effort to deal with the threats as they arise. We need your help to fortify this election protection movement. Used to be, we could rely on DOJ observers. No longer. They're counterproductive, if anything. So we need to mobilize attorneys, clergy, college students, ordinary citizens to support democracy. We need poll workers and observers inside and outside of polling places. There's a delicate balance here. We all need to recognize and announce and publicize the election threats, but we also need to shore up public support and confidence in our elections. The key message is that our elections are safe, they're reliable, they are democratic, and we intend to keep them that way. Thank you for your efforts to do just that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weiner. Now we'll open it up to our members' questions, and first we'll start with our Democratic Caucus Chair, Pete Aguilar of California.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Wasserman Schultz. It's an honor to be here. Good afternoon. I want to thank House Administration Committee Ranking Member Joe Morelli, the entire Steering and Policy Committee, and Leader Jeffries, in addition to all of our witnesses and guests for bringing us here. Donald Trump and Republicans have launched an all-out war on voting rights and free and fair elections in this country that will have repercussions in every corner of our communities. In the nearly 60 days since the conservative majority on the Supreme Court gutted the VRA, we've seen Republican-led states aggressively move to eliminate majority Black districts across the South through the Jim Crow era racial gerrymandering. Far-right extremists did not hesitate to immediately redraw Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, and Florida to shut out voters from our political process. And the consequences of Louisiana versus Calais won't end in the South, and it will hurt and impact voters nationwide. Because if we allow Republicans to dilute the voting power of communities of color anywhere in this country, we run the risk of turning back decades of progress for fair and equal representation. And these attacks on voting power and our nation's democracy by right-wing extremists who want to take this country backwards are just the beginning. Trump and Republicans have made no secret that they're doing everything in their power to overhaul our federal elections to ensure they have an advantage in the upcoming midterm election. We've seen this just this week.
What's up, Ed New York is wondering if I have any fiery Trump stuff. Here, let me see what I can pull up. I think I got the video of him pooping his pants during a press conference. Let me see if I can find it.
Trump's refusal to sign a bipartisan affordable housing bill unless Congress passed the Save America Act, his voter suppression bill that he claims will guarantee the midterms and make it so Republicans for 50 years will, his words, never lose a race. Donald Trump knows that Republicans cannot win the upcoming midterm elections based on their record alone. So he's choosing to subvert the will of the voters in order to steal the election. Democrats won't sit idly by while Donald Trump tried to steal the 2020 election, and we aren't standing by now. House Democrats will fight in Congress, will fight in the courts, and will fight in our communities to ensure Donald Trump and Republicans don't get away with their attempts to suppress the vote, silence people of color, or rig the 2026 election. Because in America, our democracy is strongest when every voice is heard and every vote is counted. Thank you so much for being here. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Next, I'll go to my co-chair, Robin Kelly, for a question.
Just very short and sweet, because of what's been going on. I don't know how you felt before, but do you feel like the Supreme Court, the number should be expanded? We can just go down real quick.
Well, I will say this. There's an active conversation happening now in the coalition about the breadth of reforms that we need. There's strong agreement that the reforms need to be very significant. There is an ongoing conversation about what that whole package looks like, but it is clear that it has to be significant. It has to be structural. I would say there is agreement on term limits. Obviously, there's agreement on binding ethics. And there's a conversation about expansion. So this is one that is going to be one that we will speak about coalitionally. And I would say no one is shying away from the fact that if we are going to continue to have a democracy, we have to have a Supreme Court that is not ideologically captured, but is that its only fealty is to the Constitution of the United States of America. And that does include the Civil War amendments.
Thank you.
And I will note, and it's important to understand as we think about these reforms that Maya Wiley has just described, there is broad public support, for example, for term limits. The most recent Fox News poll showed 78% support for an 18-year term limit for members of the Supreme Court. That's obviously a lot of Republicans and independents as well as Democrats. This is something the public wants.
Thank you. I just asked because I'm torn myself, because then when they're in charge, they can expand it more. So I just wanted to know you guys. Your way.
Yeah, thank you all. Congresswoman Susan Delbene.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to my steering and policy colleagues for hosting this. In 2011, my home state of Washington was one of the first in the nation to embrace vote by mail as a statewide standard. That decision ended up being critical for the 2020 election during the pandemic and enabled Washingtonians to vote safely. 6 years later, we're no longer at the same moment of global crisis, but vote by mail continues to serve Washingtonians, make it easier for folks to vote, including our service members, to safely and reliably cast their ballots. Trump continues to viciously criticize vote by mail, even calling it mail-in cheating. This narrative is not only false, but also dangerous. As some of you have referred to, there has been no credible evidence of significant voter fraud in Washington. As an example, yet in this past April, he used vote by mail to participate in Florida's special election, and he defended his hypocrisy, stating that because I'm president, and because I've had a lot of different things to do, that's why he needed to do that. Ms. Wiley, I wondered if you could speak to the importance of ensuring that every American has the same ability to conveniently, safely, and reliably vote by mail, just like the president.
Let's start with the fact that it is true that in 2020, because we had a pandemic, we also saw significantly more participation from people who are too often just blocked from the ballot for access reasons. We know that 1 in 4 Americans are a person with disabilities, and mail-in balloting is an incredibly important way to increase access. You also talked about the fact that we have people in service, people who are elderly, people on reservations who have long distances to the ability and also rely on drop boxes, which we would add to this list. So I say that to say this. It is very clear that for the American voter, there's deep concern about having the ability to vote and not being blocked from the ballot. Mail-in voting is simply voter access to the ballot, and blocking it is not popular, and it is not right, and it is also unfounded.
I wanted to follow up because currently the Supreme Court is considering overturning a Mississippi law that permits the counting of mail-in ballots that were received after Election Day. And I wonder if you could also comment on if the Supreme Court makes a decision and applies that to the 2026 election regarding ballots received after Election Day, what impact do you think that would have?
Well, first let me say, we will all do everything in our power to make sure that there's education of voters about how to get their mail-in ballots in on time. But it is exactly the example of just erecting a barrier rather than solving a problem. Because if the point is that we want voters to be able to vote, what difference does it make as long as it's postmarked by Election Day? That has nothing to do with the integrity of the system. It has nothing to do with whether or not people are lawfully voting. It has everything to do with whether we're just trying to block voters from the ballot. But what we will do, and what we all need to do, is greatly increase the voter education on how to vote. It is why we have the concerns about just the resources that are going to people's just ability to know what is so confusing and being changed constantly. But we'll get there because people's interest and willingness to vote is only on the rise.
And vote early. Thank you. I yield back.
And that's exactly what I was going to suggest as, again, a role that all of you can play is encouraging people to vote as early as possible. The number of ballots that come in after Election Day all over the country is about 775,000 ballots. People can get their ballots in earlier and not be scared off by the Supreme Court if it does the absurd thing of ruling that that is somehow illegal under federal law.
Thank you so much. Next is Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois.
Thank you. Ms. Wasserman-Schultz. Thank you to the witnesses. Just picking up on something that Susan Del Bene said, some Republican-run states like Texas and Florida specifically allow mail-in ballots from our military and citizens abroad, among others, that are postmarked by Election Day to be counted after the polls close. Isn't that right, Ms. Wiley?
Yes.
President Trump hasn't alleged any fraud with regard to those ballots, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
And same with Texas, too. He hasn't alleged fraud with those Texas ballots counted after Election Day, right?
As far as I know.
As this poster points out, Trump's demand to throw out ballots arriving after Election Day would break the law and disenfranchise military voters. That's a severe disservice to our men and women in uniform, among others. Mr. Waldman, I wanted to point out a federal law that you may have alluded to. 18 USC 592 makes it illegal to deploy federal troops or armed federal law enforcement at any place an election is held. Isn't that right?
Yes.
But in an interview with CNN this month, Secretary Mullen suggested that, quote, if a threat were to arise for whatever reason at a polling place, such as a bomb threat, our ICE agents can have an emergency team respond quickly. These comments are eerily
Hey, what's up? What's up, Robert?
to a plot in House of Cards, the TV show, when President Underwood fakes several bomb threats in swing states to justify sending in troops to shut down the polls. And it appears to me that President Trump is setting up exactly the same pretext that President Underwood did in this episode of House of Cards. Mr. Waldman, you also alluded to this. I just want to foot stomp this. In May, Postmaster General Steiner and the Postal Service published a proposed rule that would require states to hand over voter registration data, and if they don't, no mail-in ballots would be delivered in that state, correct?
That's correct.
And again yesterday, Steiner reaffirmed in the Senate that the USPS will not deliver mail-in ballots if states don't give the Trump administration voter rolls, right?
That's correct.
This morning,
Oh, just enjoying this, hanging out with YouTubeville and this community chat room. Appreciate everyone that's here, hanging out, sharing your opinions. But yeah, we're halfway through this hearing regarding Donald Trump's SAVE Act, and yeah, we still got about another hour to go.
as you also pointed out rightly, thankfully, a district judge blocked Trump's March executive order on mail-in voting that motivated this potential proposed rule. But let me be clear. I think all of us as a caucus speak with one voice. Mr. Steiner, you are stepping on dangerous territory. If you continue to move forward with this proposed rule, despite the court ruling this morning, I, as a senior member of the Oversight Committee, will move to subpoena you and lead the effort to remove you from your post. Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Congressman Krishnamurthy. Next, unless Congresswoman Balint is under a severe time crunch, then Congressman Goodlander has to leave. Okay, then you're next. Congresswoman Rebecca Balint.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair, especially for your leadership on this.
Oh, I like this lady right here. She's good. Becca Balint.
No, the president is historically unpopular. He knows it.
Oh yeah, the first words that she says is, "We all know the president is historically unpopular." She's already telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, especially for your leadership on this. So we know the president is historically unpopular. He knows it. His team knows it. And he knows the only way that Republicans are going to stay in power is if they meddle in elections. And he is telegraphing that in every possible way. And that is true with his obsession with the SAVE Act. And I just want to just lay it out because I know there's still so much misinformation about the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is designed to suppress the vote. That's what it's designed to do. Of American citizens who have the right to vote, naturalized citizens, language minorities, vote.
She just said it right now. The SAVE Act is intended to suppress people's right to vote.
Or poor or live in.
Here, I'll rewind it.
With the SAVE Act. And I just want to just lay it out because I know there's still so much misinformation about the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is designed to suppress the vote. That's what it's designed to do. Of American citizens who have the right to vote, naturalized citizens, language minorities, voters who are poor or live in rural areas, like in my state, military service members, women who have changed their names after marriage. It is designed to disenfranchise them. When Trump cannot win, he will cheat.
He will cheat and then he will lie about an election. He is still lying about the 2020 election. And so many of our colleagues in this body are still lying about the 2020 election. So he's desperate and he needs to use all of the tools at his disposal because he knows if he doesn't do that, he is going to lose because the American public do not support the agenda of this administration. But it's not just a SAVE Act. So I want to lay out for people who may not understand what's happening behind the scenes here in DC. He's weaponized the DOJ and the FBI to rationalize his fantasy that he won the 2020 election. He has issued executive orders to make it more difficult for people to vote.
Yeah, he hung this gigantic banner of his face on the DOJ building, like some Kim Jong-un North Korea style stuff.
He's used the Department of Homeland Security to intimidate and threaten states for their voter rolls, including my home state of Vermont. And my Secretary of State said, absolutely not, you will not have our voter rolls. He has cut key funding for election security and infrastructure. So I know that folks like you're ground zero. You do the work every day. And I've talked to my poll workers. I know this is an incredibly challenging moment that you find yourselves in. I'm wondering if in the minute that you have to tell us right now in this moment, what are the most difficult aspects of your job in terms of the pressure that you are under?
Thank you so much. Right now, it's just keeping up with all these proposed changes. And I think it's important to note that I don't have legal counsel or legal advisors. So we're operating in a framework of when these executive orders come out, I start getting questions from voters or reporters before I've had time to review what's been published. And when we see legal changes or executive orders, we're going to have to change processes midstream. So to stand up a new voter registration intake process where every single registered voter in Arlington has to come in and show ID in person before election day, that is an extremely complicated process that we do not have. We do not have a process in place. We do not have resources. We will make it work. We always do. That is our job. But yeah, it is just hard to keep up with everything that's changing right now.
Thank you for all that you do and all the poll workers across this country. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Ballant. Next up is Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici from the great state of Oregon.
Thank you so much, Ranking Member Morelli, and also thank you to Steering and Policy Committee and our leadership for being here, but also thank you so much to the witnesses. We know how critical this issue is right now. I know my colleagues, like I am at home, people say to me all the time, I'm really worried. I'm worried about election security because people who qualify have the right to vote and they need to have confidence in the process, and they don't have that right now. I want to follow up on the conversation that my colleague Susan Delbene started. I noted very clearly, she said one of the first to do all vote by mail. It's actually Oregon was the first to do all vote by mail. And I tell you, it really works. We've had it for decades. It's a safe and secure system. We have good turnout, and Oregon.
Like there was a study by of all organizations, the Heritage Foundation, which is like right wing. So these statistics came from them. But in like the last 50 years, there's only been like 10 cases of somebody like illegally voting in the last 50 years. That means you're more than likely to get struck by lightning twice than find somebody voting illegally.
Understand that it's a safe system. They also understand that the voter fraud that the administration is alleging is not real. And just to follow up on the recent executive order, which is pretty terrifying to Oregonians, as well as everybody, but especially with this requirement. Now, our Secretary of State has refused to turn over our voter files. Good for him. It's pretty outrageous that they're even asking for them. Because what they're saying is that you will not get your ballot if you don't get the state voter information. And I want to ask you, Mr. Waldman, because I know you're tracking the cases, and I know Mr. Krishnamurthy mentioned, I know the Department of Justice is suing, and the district courts have been dismissing the cases. And I think it was just yesterday that the Sixth Circuit said Michigan does not need to turn over their voter files, but that was an appeals court. We've talked about the Supreme Court. I don't have faith in the Supreme Court. So I want to ask you to kind of work through what would happen in a state like Oregon. We don't have polling places. And if people don't get their ballot, they won't be able to vote. So what do you predict? I mean, can we have some hope that as this works through the system, we don't have to there's no way we can reinvent a voting system where the election's in 150 some days. We don't have polling places. So how would we deal with this? What do you recommend?
So I would say two things. The first is that this recent executive order saying that purporting to order the Postal Service to not deliver lawfully cast ballots unless they comply with a list that doesn't exist yet from the federal government under this DHS is illegal, absurd, and fortunately now the courts are stepping in. And again, today the judge was quite clear in enjoining it as relates to the states, and the voters are asking for a nationwide injunction in the same.
Yeah, I think tomorrow they're doing a vote on Trump's illegal birthright citizenship he's trying to do. But yeah, that's gonna fail tomorrow.
From the same judge, and we have a great deal of hope that the judge will rule that way, with every hope that this will in fact not be something that election officials for both parties have to deal with going forward. More broadly, vote by mail, as you say, is used now by 1 in 3 Americans. Right. It's sort of consumer tested. It's never been
used by everybody in Oregon.
It's never been partisan or controversial until these false claims. We now have government in the grip of a conspiracy theory. On this and on so many other things, I think it's critical that we all find a way, while warning about the dangers, to ensure that people feel confident and that they vote early and they have a plan to vote, and that if they use vote by mail or Dropbox or something like that, that they know that they can do so with confidence. And then we will stop. Facts will beat fear.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That education piece is going to be really critical, that to reassure people that they will get their ballot and that they should get it in early. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Bonamici. Next up is Congresswoman Maxine Dexter of the great state of Washington State.
I'm actually Oregon also.
And Oregon. I'll make you from one of those Northwest states.
Yes.
Which is very far away from Florida.
But you're not wrong. I grew up in Washington. So good afternoon. Thank you, Co-Chair Wasserman Schultz, and our leadership, as well as you all, for coming. The work you're doing to secure our democracy is truly heroic right now. I represent, as you heard, Oregon in the 3rd Congressional, and we indeed we're the first state.
Hey, what's up, Bug 101? Yeah, I think some mobster guy was Trump's mentor in the 70s and the 80s. So some guy that goes by the name Cohen. I forget his first name. But yeah, that was his strategy is no matter what, even if you take an L, just never admit to it, and Trump could never admit to his L's.
All mail elections. We've shown for the past 3 decades, just as you've spoken to, that it increases voter turnout. We actually had the highest in our last election. So rather than look to Oregon as a model, this administration is doing everything it can to tear down vote by mail. We've talked about that. So I want to pivot to voter intimidation, which I think is also clearly part of their playbook. This week, ICE agents entered a polling location and ordered a poll worker, someone that you said is incredibly important that we should be elevating right now and recruiting, to take down a social media post.
Wow, that's crazy. I think I seen that story.
Voter intimidation. The president has made clear he wants federal.
Yeah, Trump's already sending his Gestapo goons to do intimidation tactics at the polling places.
At polling places, we know that's illegal. We know what that also will do to voters. Seeing this on social media, hearing about it, my community is responding, saying that the SAVE Act is going to.
Hey, what up, madame? All right, thank you. Yeah, Roy Cohn, that guy, yeah.
That only citizens vote, all the things that we already know are real. You want us to increase confidence in our elections, and yet the misinformation and the pervasiveness of their commitment to misinformation is extremely threatening. And so I just would ask whoever feels most appropriate for me to ask. We know that this is illegal voter intimidation, and yet they're doing it. We know that this is, frankly, lying about what the SAFE Act will do, and yet they're doing it. How do we combat that? How do we help make voters
Make sense, madame. That was Trump's mentor, Roy Cohn, the commie guy.
and not intimidated, as well as our poll workers who we so desperately need?
Art, first of all, I just want to acknowledge what my friend Michael shared about.
Oh, for sure. Her, Descartes, yeah. Hope you have a good rest of your night. Catch you later.
Litigators are going to litigate quickly. And that's critically important for folks to know now, that it's actually about their rights, about it being unlawful, and that there will be action taken. That's not unimportant as part of the message. The other thing is, look, we as a Civil Rights Coalition fought for and won policies from technology companies to make sure the mis and disinformation online was at least limited or labeled or identified in other ways where the algorithm would reduce the way in which the disinformation spread. The lies about whether it's mail-in voting, whether it's fraud in the 2020 election, and all of the disinformation we're talking about is rampant online, and it is because there have been either capitulation or complicity with allowing that disinformation and lessening the oversight that is lawful, that is not a violation of the First Amendment. So there's a lot that elected leaders can do to say to the technology companies, those were good policies, they were advancing democracy, they were protecting your user and your user community, and we need you to be doing that more. And then finally, I would say, I just want everyone to know that the organizing work that is happening on the ground is quite real. And we have in our faith community, and we've been participating in the trainings, training clergy of all faiths to be mediators at sites in case ICE shows up, and ensuring that we're letting communities know, because one of the things we have learned is that when voters understand there is a protection network for their rights, there are people who will be present, that does make a difference for their sense of ability to show up despite the suppressive efforts. And the only other thing I would add is we have to remember the swatting, which is what we were hearing from your colleague around call-ins to polling sites claiming bombing as a pretext. That should be the appropriate local law enforcement and the local election officials who make the calls about what happens with that. It's the same type of violation to suggest federal agents play that role. We should make very clear who the trusted leaders are in responding, because we do expect to see an increase in those kinds of swatting calls to try to interrupt people's right to vote. So we're also paying attention to that on the education and engagement front.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Dexter. Next up is Congresswoman Jill Takuda, of Hawaii.
Thank you very much for being here. I have a lot of thoughts, but I have 3 minutes. So I'm going to start by just talking about a few things that really concern me. I serve on the Armed Services Committee. I asked Secretary Hegseth if he would follow the Constitution or if he would follow the president when it came to sending the military to polls. He could not answer my question at all. He could also not answer the question when I asked him if he would follow President Trump's orders to shoot people, innocent people, protesters in the leg. So this gives me great concern that at the end of the day, Donald Trump thinks brown and black voters are the enemy. The Constitution is very clear. Armed enemies of the state are the only way the president can order the military or ICE, law enforcement in general, to go to these election polls. But he sees us as the enemy. And so I have great concern that we can file every lawsuit after the fact, but the fact that he can give the order to Hegseth that day and armed men and women and service members sadly will be forced into an impossible position. Will be there at the polls, threatening voters, dissuading voters from coming. Again, election suppression happening right in our face in violation, blatant violation of the Constitution, but happening in real time. What are we going to do then?
Yeah, I think I remember like in the 2020 elections, Trump was like removing mailboxes. He was just like removing them from like streets.
When all of a sudden the army shows up at the polls. The other thought I have as I'm thinking about guns at our poll sites is what are we going to do immediately to make sure our election workers are safe? We have laws in the books, we have protections. But at the end of the day, what do we have to do now to ensure that every election worker, before that election day and after that election day, and especially during that election day, can be safe? Is there anything we've got to work with our states to pass right now in terms of protections and different, liabilities and exemptions and anything that has resources? What do we need to do? Because I have great fear that yes, there is the guns, but there's also the threats upon our election teams that make democracy work. And then just in a practical sense, then we've got all this spinning in our head. We're in the minority. What can we practically do now when we do not have the numbers to pass a bill to protect our workers, to keep Donald Trump away from those polls with the armed guards? And what is the first bill we better drop when we get those gavels back in our hand to make sure that everything that we've talked about here today can be blocked from ever happening again? In 19 seconds.
Okay,
We have a
so,
little flexibility because
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say that even not having the gavel, representatives have some very powerful tools, including for that type of emergency situation. And this is actually something we shared with the Congressional Black Caucus at one point. But the ability of representatives to organize with your community leaders, to have peaceful turnout in support of mediating if the military shows up. That's actually vital. It is something why we saw what I consider to be a baseless criminal prosecution of LaMonica MacGyver, but we should not allow that to be a threat that prevents what is an actual organizing opportunity for our electeds to do with community leaders, including faith leaders. Remember when I said that there's an organizing of faith leaders to be those moral leaders who are on the ground to mediate. But there is a real opportunity to be prepared for that, organize for that, and peacefully be present. The second thing I would say is in terms of we are working as a coalition to make sure you have the things to drop on day one if you get the gavel back. But even without the gavel, even conversations like these and having more of these as community conversations that empower where and how local community leaders can be active, engaged, and working to ensure that it's peaceful, but that it's also...
Yeah, it's only 4 months away too. So what do we got? July, August, September, and October. Yeah, just in 4 months, we'll find out how this is all going to go down. But it's pretty scary to think about how like Trump's just like trying to like send like the military to the polling places. That's insane.
To anything that happens day of is an incredibly important amount of work to do now, and we're happy to partner with you on that.
And I will add two things. Law enforcement can play a very significant role, and you as members can be interacting with local law enforcement on this. There's an organization that we and others are part of, the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections. Nationwide, partly law enforcement, police, sheriffs, prosecutors, and partly election officials from both parties. So that...
Oh, it's all good, Amber. Yeah, I just throw out the blue wrench to like people that never will drink the Kool-Aid. Don't feel like obligated to do anything because of it. But yeah, I appreciate you hanging out and commenting though.
Officers are going to have pocket guides on how to protect the elections all over the country. That can play a significant role in protecting election officials and giving voters greater confidence. The other thing I would say is the business community needs to step up. You think about in 2020, business community, big businesses mobilized about 600,000 people to be poll workers because of COVID. They can make this a civic, nonpartisan mobilization that will calm the waters and diminish the chance that any of these things will happen.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Tuda. Next up is Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon from Pennsylvania.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the Steering and Policy Committee for holding this hearing and bringing together the combined expertise of these witnesses for the benefit of the American people. We've got a lot of disinformation to push back on. You know, one of the enduring legacies of this president is going to be the extent to which he has undermined the faith of the American people in our elections, claiming without truth and without justification that American elections are not safe or reliable, that non-citizens regularly vote, or that results can't be trusted. None of that is true. The reality is our elections are administered by dedicated public servants, members of our local communities, our neighbors, backed by rigorous safeguards, bipartisan oversight, and local officials working to ensure that every vote is counted. This should not be a partisan issue. But instead of strengthening the systems that keep elections reliable, Republicans continue pushing lies and costly legislation like the Save America Act, which would disenfranchise millions of American citizens, especially women, young people, and low-income voters. Non-citizen voting is already illegal. All of our states have in place systems that ensure only citizens can register to vote. The argument is made that it's common sense to have voter ID, but the devil is in the details, and specifically which types of ID are allowed. And I want to speak directly to Pennsylvanians on this one. The Save America Act would really rely upon you having a passport or a real ID showing citizenship. Now in Pennsylvania, less than half of Pennsylvanians have passports. And in order to get one, it's going to cost you at least $175 and months in order to get that passport. No Pennsylvanians have a real ID that will allow them to register to vote under the Save America Act. So it's going to be a massive cost and expense. The estimate is that at a time when families are already struggling with higher costs, this bill would cost Americans over $19 billion. $19 billion is a hell of a poll tax. So instead of manufacturing problems that don't exist, we should be working on actually strengthening our systems, making sure that our systems have the resources they need to make it easy for every citizen to vote. Mr. Waldman, you mentioned that today the federal court has declared an executive order unconstitutional for trying to federalize elections by ordering DHS to make a list of citizens and directing the Postal Service to interfere in mail-in voting. And yesterday, I think we had congressional testimony by the head of the Postal Service saying, yep, he was going to go along with that unconstitutional order. Can you tell us why this is such a problem?
The way you described it, sort of what could go wrong with that scenario. The Postal Service has an important role to play, and it sometimes struggles to play even that role. To demand or purport to order that the independent Postal Service run the elections and determine who is eligible to vote is not only illegal, unconstitutional, and outrageous, it's absurd to think that it could ever actually lead to anything other than chaos. I do think that the courts, who play an important, if limited, role, will step up here, as they have begun to on this. The Postal Service cannot be deciding whether a state, in its lawful exercise of its powers under the Constitution, is properly running its elections.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I could just say the problems with voting in this country are not who is voting, but who isn't.
That's fair. That's fair. And I just want to thank, I think almost every one of you, if not every one of you, has mentioned how important it is that citizens step up and be ambassadors for democracy by working at the polls, because you can help the system work. And you can also explain to people why our elections are so reliable and safe. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Scanlon. Next is Congresswoman Delia.
Oh my goodness. I totally forgot about Rush Limbaugh. Man, Rush Limbaugh was like the number one propaganda dude.
The great state of Illinois.
Thank you so much, Chair. The great state of Illinois. Well, first, let me just say how incredibly grateful I am for this opportunity and this conversation, and having the steering policy co-chairs have all of you witnesses here today to talk about how do we in fact defend democracy, how do we in fact defend election integrity, and what is the path forward so that we're never here again. So I want to thank you for being here. You know, when people talk about the possibility of democratic backsliding in the United States, I've been very clear, that possibility is gone. We are here, right? From big, unaccountable money in politics buying representation to authoritarians that are attempting to erode free and fair elections. And frankly, what we were just seeing with Supreme Court decisions and spreading this white nationalist terror to disenfranchised Black, brown, low-income voters, the very foundations of our democracy are in fact under attack. You know, I heard you say, Mr. Wiener, just a moment ago, the problem is not who is voting, it's about who is not voting. And I'll tell you that when I hear from constituents constantly, they're so darn tired of the fights. They're so tired of super PACs, shell PACs, billionaires, mega corporations, suppressing their voice at the ballot box, attempting to buy elections, silence our communities. And they want to know that the person that they're electing is in fact the person that represents them. And frankly, our communities are also tired of being under siege by Trump's national paramilitary force, ICE. Today, as Trump deploys ICE at his whim, seizes voting records, holds bipartisan bills hostage, while he attacks free and fair elections, we're collectively confronting the threat of a president who is lining up the pieces to perpetrate a coup. I don't say this lightly, but here's where we are. Our communities are tired of having the same fights that their grandparents fought against white supremacists who would seek to keep Black and brown voters from exercising their voting rights and realizing change at the ballot box. And it's why today's roundtable is so incredibly important to me, because it's naming a reality and resisting it. That attack on elections and restrictions on who gets to exercise their right to vote, because we know it's about control, we know it's about consolidating power, about remaining in office against the will of the people. And to that, I think you hear from our colleagues here, we're saying hell no. Ms. Reinmeyer, Access reported that HSI agents demanded voting information from 2 counties in North Carolina and Texas. Could you tell me from your perspective what you foresee the impact of these actions will be on local elections to voters?
It's a good question. So I think it's important to note that states have laws about who they can release that data to. And so when we hear states not turning over data, it's because there are laws in place in our states to prohibit the turnover of this data. And we have to think about why are people requesting this data? And there is an effort to clean voter rolls, find duplicate voters, find potential non-citizens. And I think that's what we're working towards, is to have some kind of voter list maintenance program at the federal level. That is my assumption.
Got it. Thank you. I know my time is up, so I'll go ahead and yield back to the chair, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Ramirez. Next up is Congresswoman Lucy McBath of Georgia.
Madam Chair, I really appreciate being here, and as one who's been gerrymandered 3 times, definitely I'm really glad to have our witnesses here. Thank you so much for appearing before us. This year, we're going to actually celebrate the 61st anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, but our fight for the right to vote continues. Since I was a toddler, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am, just a couple years, I've attended numerous marches and rallies, just demanding equity for all and, pushing for a better future, because the right to vote is a right to have your voice heard. And today that right is under attack. I grew up in the civil rights movement at 3 years of age. Yes, I was in the stroller at the March on Washington. Mm-hmm. We saw it in the Calais decision, which kicked off a wave of efforts across the South, which I live in Georgia, to draw Black voices into silence. We saw this week when the sitting president refused to sign a bipartisan housing reform bill that would have revived the American dream of home ownership, simply because he wanted a voter suppression bill passed instead. And we are seeing it right now in Georgia, where the Department of Justice has seized our 2020 voter ballots and election records from Fulton County and is now demanding the personal information of 3,000 election workers and volunteers. Intimidation, intimidation, intimidation. Not because any court, recount, or investigation has ever found evidence of fraud, but because this administration wants to intimidate the people who make our elections run soundly and smoothly. Our votes are being threatened on every front, but But I know that we're not going to be silenced, and the people's will is not going to be silenced. Georgia has been ground zero for voting rights for decades, and it still is today. And I've been redistricted, as I said, 3 times just since I've been here in Congress. This is my 8th year. And I've represented nearly 2.3 million Georgians at this point. That's more than any other representative in the history of my state. The redistricting in my state has left voters so confused that it's a daily occurrence, even among people who consider themselves politically savvy. I'm speaking to people all the time who say, I am in your district, and I have to say, which district are you in? Because they're confused, they don't know. It's our job to make sure that we stay connected with our local officials and organizations to ensure our constituencies remain informed to combat voter suppression. Ms. Reinemeyer, your experience can provide us with firsthand feedback on what it's like to be an election worker. These workers and volunteers, they're essential to our voting apparatus, yet they're increasingly facing threats, harassment, and a flood of disinformation meant to undermine their work. What strategies should we be offering our election workers and grassroots organizers to keep them safe from this intimidation and to help them and our voters combat the disinformation that's clouding the process?
Thank you so much. It's a very good question. And I'd actually like to bring in the Brennan Center. So one of the things that I attended recently was a meeting that they held for metro jurisdictions across the country. And they had a presentation that helped educate local election officials on just navigating the different legal systems. So what happens when you're served with a subpoena versus somebody trying to get your court records? Local election administrators and our poll workers, they are not familiar with the criminal justice system. So when law enforcement shows up at your door with something, a legal paperwork demanding access to something, we don't know who to call and we don't know how to proceed when that happens. So what we're doing now, what we're seeing now is training and how to handle this event should it happen. So now in the future, local election administrators are going to be more prepared when somebody shows up and is asking for access to information, asking for ballots or asking things. And we can do that too with our poll workers as well. So when the police are knocking on their door, asking them about information, we need to make sure they're educated and they know what their rights are when they encounter these scenarios. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much. And I yield.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman McBath. Next up is Congressman Hank Johnson, also of the great state of Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for.
Oh yeah, this guy's awesome right here. This guy's cool.
This very important hearing, and thank you to the witnesses for your testimony today. I'd like to talk a little bit about the cybersecurity threat in a state like Georgia that electronic voting is the way that we vote throughout the state. They are touchscreen electronic voting machines. And now the president is dismantling the apparatus to protect the nation from cybersecurity threats insofar as voting is concerned, firing people at CISA. What impact or what are the ramifications of what the president has been doing on the integrity of the voting process in jurisdictions where direct ballot touchscreen electronic voting is taking place, which is about 30% of the voters in the country?
Yeah, MAGA cult members would probably vote yes for like a cavity search in order to vote.
Well, one thing is undermining the confidence of people in the electoral process without any evidence that there is a problem. The other concern is that the president will use concerns about voting machines to seize those machines, either before the election or after the election, and use and break the chain of custody so that it will be difficult to certify an election.
Well, even before getting to that point, foreign interference or malign bad actors, domestic, having influence. I mean, we know that the process is not fail-proof, that it can be hacked into.
Yes.
I think that's an important issue that looms large over the horizon as we approach November of 2026. Can anybody talk about additional threats posed by the post office in terms of voting suppression? We know that Trump issued an executive order, but there are other things like postmarking of ballots and things like that. Are there other threats that we need to know about that emanate from the use of the post office as a voter suppression tool?
You're right that the changes at the Postal Service, some of them unrelated to elections, presumably raise continued concerns over relying on that as the only way for people to vote. Our answer has been to encourage people to vote early, to vote in person early if available, to use drop boxes and that sort of thing, as well as the Postal Service, because it's under tremendous pressure and they've made changes relating to, as you said, to postmarking for reasons having nothing, at least it is said, for elections. And certainly, as we've said over and over, the Postal Service does not have the right under the law to run state elections.
Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Thank you so much, Congressman Johnson. Next up is our colleague, Congressman Herb Conaway from the great state of New Jersey.
Hi, and thank you for allowing me to say a few words here and before this hearing by this Policy and Steering Committee. You know, as a physician, I've spent my career looking at systems, how they work. If you have a system that works as designed to produce great outcomes, you will have something that will work, or in the case of healthcare, to help promote individual health and public health.
That's that. Hey, Daryl, that's a lie right there.
Beyond that, here we have in our country the best election system in the world, and it's being run into the ground, it's being defamed by the President of the United States for his own personal interest and the interests of his party and remaining in power. But our election officials take their job and responsibilities very seriously. They are not particularly well paid, but they are dedicated to the law and the foundational principles of our country. And thank God for them, because they have been under extraordinary pressures from people who use the internet, who get on the phone, who basically harass them. I was proud to participate as a member of the Democratic Caucus on the Veterans Affairs Committee just yesterday, where we heard from veterans across the country involved in a coalition to invite and encourage veterans to serve as election board workers, to serve on election day, to once again answer the call of their nation to defend and protect our Constitution and the bedrock principles of a free and fair election, so that the people may express themselves before as respects their government. And the Constitution is clear about the fact that elections are administered by the states and overseen by the Congress and not controlled by the White House. It was a very important principle that has been foundational for our country, because power, as its history has shown, often corrupts. And it often corrupts really quite thoroughly, as I believe we're experiencing here in our own country. And so we should reject efforts to politicize or centralize election administration. We know what that will result in. I think people are forgetting that we use the power to raise our voice, which is now being encumbered by the president. We're putting people in jail who have been engaged in protests of one of the important, well, it wasn't a right then, but it was certainly an expression of the desire of people to engage in self-determination, to direct their own course as individuals and as people. And here we have a president who is throwing people in jail for raising their voice in protest and striking at the very heart of our democracy.
Hey, what's up, Daryl? No, what happened? It was it's the new YouTube detection system. So it detects when MAGA cult members drank too much Kool-Aid. So it's the YouTube detection system that automatically puts MAGA cult members in like a timeout. So I don't know if you have an issue with that, you might have to contact YouTube and check in on their new MAGA cult member system.
An act of love for your country, and let's let that love spread as far and wide as it can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman Conaway. And next is Congressman Wesley Bell from the great state of Missouri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday, Postmaster General Steiner confirmed under oath that the Postal Service will refuse to deliver mail ballots to states that don't surrender their voter rolls to this administration. Under our Constitution, it is absolutely the purview of state and local officials, not the president, who administer elections, serve voters, and count the ballots that determine who the people choose. And my colleague reminded me of the saying that power, absolutely. And the thread running through all of this is the same. The president doesn't trust elections he might lose. And he is using every lever of federal power to make it harder to vote. Ms. Reinemeyer, I want to ask you a question first. When the president claims mail-in voting is riddled with fraud and uses that claim to justify withholding ballot delivery unless states hand over their voter rolls, what does that look like from where you sit? And the follow-up to that is there an epidemic of fraud in your mail ballot program that justifies this kind of federal intervention?
I think it's really important for voters and elected officials to understand that the vote by mail system in Virginia requires that voter's record to be touched a minimum of 4 times. We're going to verify, is this voter who's applying for a mail ballot, are they registered to vote? We're going to send them the ballot. Then when the ballot comes back, we're going to verify that they haven't voted yet and that it was signed and all their information matches their voter record on their forms. And then we have a second verification step before that vote is ultimately counted. So that is far more verification steps that are involved with any in-person voting processes in Virginia. So to accuse that system of having fraud in it, it is frustrating because it is actually more time consuming and there are more checks in place than there are with an in-person voting system.
Thank you. Mr. Weiner, Postmaster General Steiner confirmed yesterday that under the administration's proposed rule, USPS will refuse to mail ballots to states that don't hand over their absentee voter rolls to the federal government. Can you walk us through what constitutional authority the Postal Service believes it has to condition ballot delivery on states surrendering voter data?
Well, the answer, I think, is none.
That's what I anticipated.
The Postal Service has an obligation to deliver the mail. That is the duty that Congress imposed on them. There are no circumstances there are specific circumstances where the Postal Service can refuse to deliver the mail when it's unsafe, and there are specified reasons in the statute. Not fulfilling the president's desires regarding who gets to vote is not one of the reasons the Postal Service is entitled to invoke.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for organizing this, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Congressman Bell and Congressman John Mannion of my original home state of New York.
Actually, once this is over, I'm going to continue the YouTubeville watch party so we can watch some other stuff together and comment on it. But Obama did an interview. So it looks pretty interesting. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks like it came out like recently, within like the last 10 hours. So we'll check that out. I think there's about, I don't know, like 10 minutes left in this. We'll let it ride out. But yeah, this has been a good hearing so far, and I appreciate everyone's comments and anyone that hit the like button. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here today. I run in swing districts. My first election in 2018 for state senate, I lost by 1.9%. So I went through an absentee count. In 2020, I won by 5% in 2020 in an absentee count, as you can imagine. And then in
Hey, what up? What up, Sim Racing? Long time no here. Hey, good to see you, pal. I hope you're having a good weekend and hope you've been well.
I was redistricted and I won a state senate seat with over 123,000 votes cast by 10 votes. So then I ran for Congress. That was a piece of cake. So, Ms. Reinemeyer, I thank you and all of your colleagues for what you do and appreciate it. And Representative Dexter mentioned the ICE incident that occurred in my district, and we could talk about that, but I want to get to this. People want to know what they can do.
Yeah, all good. Sometimes it's got, so I did the same thing, but yeah, it's good to like take a break from stuff every once in a while and like, just live your life, but yeah, it's the midterms are coming up. So figure, got a lot of work to do the next 4 months. So appreciate everyone here in here that's sharing all the information of Donald Trump's bogusness, and for everyone to not vote for any of these MAGA meat riding politicians. Hey, Sim Racing. But yeah, good to see you.
So you had mentioned, Mr. Weiner, that people can work as a poll worker, they can work as a poll observer. And I mentioned that. What else can people do because they want to defend this democracy?
Well, they can vote and vote early. That's really important to make sure that their voice gets heard. They can volunteer. They can come work on our hotline, 866, our vote. And they can, and you can, get the message out that our voting system is safe and it's reliable. 0.3 of the votes are by foreign citizens. That's what the SAVE Act is about. That's what all this folderol from Trump is about. 0.3 Our system is safe, and that message is important.
And thank you. Anyone else? I wanted you to be able to say that hotline again. I will share that. It is appropriate for everyday folks who want to help to call that. Is a coalition? Is there a place? Is there a website? Is there a phone number where people can say, I want to help and this is how I can?
Well, anyone can sign up for at civilrights.org for more information. It is our member organizations like the Lawyers Committee, like the Brennan Center, and like so many others, NAACP. I was born in Syracuse, by the way.
Miss Wiley?
So I'm
Go
deep
Fuse.
New York.
You know who else lived there?
Who else?
Jalen Brunson.
Well, hi, go Knicks. Okay. But I say that the way in which we can connect folks to all the work that's happening on the coalition, the information is generally shared that way. And if there's any other connection we can make, please feel free to reach out and we will do so.
All of that. I appreciate all of that, as do the patriotic Americans out there across this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman Mannion, and bringing us home for this really incredibly important hearing is Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury from the great state of New Mexico.
Oh yeah, she's awesome.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today.
She's going after Epstein's ranch in New Mexico.
The number one question I get asked when I'm home in New Mexico and across the country is, are we going to have another free and fair election? And my first answer is yes. In fact, in most states right now, we are having them as primaries. And so if you have not yet voted yet, please go out and vote. That is the most important thing you can do right now to exercise your democratic right to the ballot box. But as we know, we've seen unabashed attacks every single day by this administration in every branch of government on our voting system. And I think the number one question that people want to know is, what are we going to do? Worst case scenario, what are we going to do? Especially on election day. And I want to say thank you to the chairman, to the Democratic caucus, because we do have a plan and we want America to know that we have a plan. And that plan includes shoring up voter integrity and poll watching in every state. It includes states who are passing laws like New Mexico to keep armed agents away from our polling stations and to give local jurisdictions the ability to enforce that. It's states like New Mexico.
Hey, what up, Brett? Hey, good to see you. Yeah, just watching this this hearing about Donald Trump's Save the Maggot Act. His illegal and unconstitutional Save the Maggot Act, which is going to fail. But yeah, after this is done, there's about 8 minutes left. We're going to watch Obama did an interview today, so we'll check that out.
Expanded voting rights and are protecting them. And it is also our litigation strategy. So I wonder, actually, if I could ask Mr. Waldman and Ms. Wiley, what is our plan if, worst case scenario, the president does not accept the election results on election day? And what can Americans do to be prepared?
The states decide who has won the elections. Presidents do not. Indeed, the federal government does not. And one protection that exists is that certification of these results is a ministerial matter. It happens as a routine matter in counties and states all across the country. We need to push back against disinformation and lies about elections not being rigged. When somebody loses an election, they proclaim that that's what's occurred. State and local.
No, we're all free speech over here, Scott Worley. Give it a shot. What do you want to say? I mean, obviously, if there's like disinformation or just some like bogus ass comment, then yeah, send someone. The mod's got full immunity. We're not afraid to send someone back to Jonestown.
A very critical role to play. Members of Congress will have a critical role to play as well. But the fundamental bottom line fact is something that we all took for granted, which is the results are in the hands of the voters. We need to lift up the voice of the voters as who made the decision. And that will render illegitimate all the efforts to try to undo what the voters did.
And in other words, we'll need to use the courts to do that.
And the courts have stepped up over and over again, not just this year, but previously on this kind of thing. And we hope they will continue to do so.
Yeah, and I ditto what he said. But also just to say, I think this is incumbent, and we've been saying this for our elected leaders to also be meeting with local community leaders and our coalitional leaders, because those plans are going to need to be tailored also place to place. There are going to be different dynamics. There are different issues of who a Secretary of State is, for example, and where and how the levers that can be drawn. But the work with community leaders on what the organizing on the ground is for that type of potential threat on election day, and also post, in terms of the counting of votes and what we could see from a federal government that tries to claim the votes that have been certified by a state cannot be counted because they're going to claim that undocumented.
You gotta be kidding me, Scott Worley. So you took your time to type out that whole lie right there? Oh my goodness. Nah. It's Donald Trump over there that's trying to cheat and rig the elections. He's the one that started the whole gerrymandering thing. And Gavin Newsom fought back and won. Like their whole thing blew up in their face.
Voted. That is also something that we're planning for. That.
And then they had like Tulsi Gabbard over there in Fulton County seizing the votes from like the 2020 election.
On the actual day of election. So there's a lot we can do to be organized on the ground around where and how people show up and be loud in a peaceful way about what their rights are, what is happening, and who can be trusted, which is their local election administration and state administrators.
Well, thank you very much. And Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity. And I just want to reassure the American people, we are still a free and fair democracy. Your voice is your vote. Stand up, speak up, show up like no one has ever shown up before, because this is our year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Stansbury. I'm actually going to ask a question myself, just as we wrap up.
Oh, thank you for your comment, though, Scott. LOL.
And that is that I know you're all familiar with the fact that the House of Representatives is the ultimate arbiter of who sits in our body and who is seated after an election. I mean, we do have certification documents that are sent from secretaries of state and heads of division of elections. But I mean, I have heard concerns about the possibility of, collusion with the White House or the initiative themselves of the Speaker and the current Republican majority, particularly because it is likely that
no illegals voted for Harris.
The majority in this election, whether they engage in refusal to seat.
In fact, there's only been 10 cases of somebody that that illegally voted in the last 50 years, and those are stats coming from the Heritage Foundation. So you're more likely to get struck by lightning twice than find somebody that votes illegally.
Elected members of Congress who have beaten Republicans, and how that can be dealt with in the event that happens. That's attempted.
I know that folks are thinking about that, but I would again suggest that the most important thing any of us can do, and certainly that all of you can do with the extraordinarily powerful access to the public megaphone that you have, is that the voters decide. It's the voice of the voters that matters. And then any game playing, finagling, trying to use the rules at any level, but certainly in Congress, is to undo the will of the voters. That's and it's important in a sense almost to not normalize the idea that it might happen, because that would be an extraordinary breach of what we've always had in running elections. And so that to us is the most fundamental thing that we all should say to ourselves, but say out loud.
We need these elections to not be close. People need to vote early and get their ballots in when there's no other choice for a Secretary of State or the head of a division of elections to certify the results of an election because it's not close. Then it becomes harder for that nightmarish outcome to be something we're facing. So, well, that was certainly a sobering conversation that we've had and the challenges that we face.
All right, that's the end of that hearing. Let's go see what else we got in the queue here. What up, everyone? Thanks for hanging out. Little Sunday night. All right, let's see what we got in the queue here. So the Obama hearing, let me skim through it though real quick. Or there's the Obama interview. John Ossoff did an interview. Kind of want to watch that too. Let's see who else we got. Let's check out some clips from some hearing stuff. Let's check out this stuff. All right, let's see what's up with John Ossoff real quick. So we'll play John Ossoff. Then we'll play this clip. I haven't seen any of these, but they're in the queue. This Lizzie Fletcher flips the script on the GOP. We'll check that out. And then we'll check out Senator Kelly. Senator Kelly. See what he has to say. And Warnock. We got Warnock and Senator Murphy. All right, we got some stuff to check out. See, let's start with John Ossoff.
Old health insurance premiums for more of an...
All right, so this is John Ossoff. This just came out yesterday, or Sunday morning. John Ossoff lays into Mike Collins, calls him a bigot while speaking about the Senate race. All right, this looks like it should be interesting. Let's see what's up with this.
So, Senator, thanks for talking to me. Sure. Appreciate it. You're the one Democrat who's running in a state that Donald Trump won in 2024. And listening to your speeches, you're very much running against Donald Trump, not as someone who works with Donald Trump.
Oh, Ossoff is a solid politician. This dude doesn't beat around the bush or sugarcoat anything.
a risk in a purple state like yours with so many independent voters?
I think the president has earned the criticism and earned disgrace. His economic agenda is a disaster for the country. He's doubled health insurance premiums for more than 1 million Georgians. His tariffs have driven up grocery prices and the prices of just about everything else. He's been globally humiliated in Iran. Just last month, Americans faced record high prices for groceries, for healthcare, and for housing. This under a president who promised he would lower prices on day one. And all the while, the president and his family are enriching themselves to the tune of billions of dollars. And the president is trying to build a monument to himself. I think it's obscene. I think he's a failed president and he's deeply unpopular in Georgia.
Well, I mean, obviously, but Democrats too are unpopular. I'm wondering what you think needs to change in your party to convince voters that you'll actually deliver in a Senate majority.
Well, the coalition that I'm building in Georgia stretches far beyond just Democrats. There are independents and a growing number of Republicans who are supporting me. And my office has distinguished itself through the quality and caliber of constituent service that we've provided to communities across the state, the oversight and investigations that I've led into corruption and civil rights abuses in our federal prison system, into the mistreatment of military families and privatized housing on bases across Georgia, the work that I've done helping Georgia's agricultural sector expand market access all over the world. And what you're seeing right now is a growing number of conservatives who are unwilling to support my opponent, Congressman Mike Collins, or saying that they're going to support me because they know I've done a good job for the state. And because it's widely understood in Georgia that Congressman Collins is a person of low integrity and poor character, who is known as a bigot and an anti-Semite, and who has voted to double Georgians' health insurance premiums, voted for war, and voted for tariffs.
But should things change with your party? Should you have a new leadership, for instance, in a Senate majority?
Look, I think all that'll be aired out over the next year. But what I'm focused on right now is my obligations to my constituents in Georgia and this crucial battleground Senate race in Georgia. And it's worth remembering that I am the only Democratic senator in the country running for re-election in a state the president won. And I expect national Republican groups to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in the effort to unseat me in Georgia. This will be a razor-thin competitive U.S. Senate race.
You talk about alleged crimes of the president. You talk about corruption for the president. If you guys take back the House and the Senate, should you impeach the president and convict him?
Look, as I've said in the past, it is my view, looking at the facts and the conduct and misconduct of this president, that he has already engaged in gross misconduct that exceeds the standard previously set for the impeachment of any president. What I think is that there has to be accountability. And that is...
Does that mean impeachment?
Let me just say accountability. Well, as I've said, I think that his misconduct has already exceeded the standard previously set for presidents when it comes to impeachment. The bottom...
Oh yeah, he makes Nixon look like a choir boy.
There has to be accountability. And I think we have to distinguish between accountability, which is different from vengeance. I'm not talking about a punitive partisan effort. What I'm saying is that we have to make sure the truth about what's happened in this administration becomes public and that there's accountability for misconduct. Whether that misconduct is the overt corruption that we've seen, this unprecedented self-enrichment by the first family. I mean, just consider the fact.
Oh yeah, I've noticed the MAGA bots have been picking up steam. Spread all their disinformation out there for the midterms.
The man leading United States nuclear diplomacy in the Middle East, Jared Kushner, is not just the president's son-in-law with no relevant qualifications to be engaged in high-level international diplomacy with immense stakes for American national security. He's also someone whose business has received billions of dollars from Saudi royals and who, as he engages in Middle Eastern diplomacy for the United States, is at the same time soliciting billions of dollars more from Arab princes. This is unprecedented in terms of the corruption and conflicts of interest, and there has to be accountability.
So you talked about the Republican Party. What about the Democratic Party? We're seeing this shift to the left that has happened, whether it's in the New York Democratic primaries, the Maine Democratic primaries on the left. Collins is very much trying to tie you to the leftward shift in your party. Are you personally concerned at all about what we're seeing and the rise in the left this election cycle?
Here's what I think we're seeing across the country, and it's happening in both political parties. We are seeing a growing revulsion at the corruption of an entrenched political class that, especially since the Citizens United decision, opened the floodgates.
That's hilarious, Brett. Oh yeah, I think I heard somebody call JD Vance VP eyeliner.
To limitless secret corporate funding of politics has been less and less responsive to the needs of the American people and more responsive to powerful donors, whether they're corporate interests or the ultra rich. And I think that.
Hey, what's up, David? Yeah, I saw the report on that. All the fake bot MAGA accounts that were exposed on Twitter, they're all like originated in like Indonesia or something. There was also, don't forget about Johnny MAGA. They had that whole psyop with Johnny MAGA. And then they had this like AI chick that they passed off as like a real person. And all the MAGA cult members fell for it. They're all like joining her OnlyFans and like paying her all this money. And it ended up just being like an AI image.
Driving some of the dynamics we're seeing in both political parties right now.
I know you got to run. So the buzz is out there about you in 2028. I know you don't like to talk about it.
Oh yeah, AOC would probably mop the floor with Vance's nappy head. But me personally, I think 2028 should be this guy, John Ossoff, or Mark Kelly, Jamie Raskin, Sheldon Whitehouse, Gavin Newsom. There's a lot of candidates.
On this race, what do you say to those people who are talking about you in 2028? Is that something that you've ruled out?
Yeah, let me reiterate. I am not running for president in 2028. I have no interest in running for president in 2028. I am laser focused on this Senate race in Georgia, where I'm facing a disgrace.
Hey, what's up, Trevor? Oh yeah, Jesse Ventura, that dude's solid. He had an interview recently. He really laid it into the Orange Man.
One of the most extreme members of
You guys see that interview that Jesse Ventura did recently where he laid it into the Orange Man? That was hilarious.
In the country, an election denier who has made excuses for those who violently sacked the U.S. Capitol.
All right, Brett, have a good one. Thanks for hanging out.
Ago, whose chief of staff has been revealed to be conspiring with white nationalists to try to get a Holocaust denier freed from prison. This is
No, there's nothing wrong with wearing eyeliner. Like, look at like Motley Crue and all that. The problem is that these MAGA politicians, they pretend to be like all these like alpha males and like anti-LGBTQ, and when they're participating in all those activities, they're just a bunch of hypocrites. Like, they always crash the Grindr app.
Congressman who, in addition to being pro-war, pro-tariff, and pro-cutting healthcare, has viciously engaged in the anti-Semitic harassment of a Jewish reporter and refused to apologize for it, and praised young men who were mocking a black woman on a college campus making monkey noises. He is understood in Georgia by both Democrats and Republicans to be unfit for office and unfit for promotion. And there's a reason Governor Brian Kemp worked so hard to try to prevent him from getting this nomination.
You have any thoughts on the nicknames Trump has given you?
I don't care about nicknames, but I think what is widely understood across the country and the entire world is that this president has humiliated himself through the failure of his foreign policy in the Middle East. His approval rating sits at 34%, while Americans pay more than they ever have for just about everything. He adorns his office in gold. While cancer patients face down the prospect of losing health coverage, he builds a monument to himself. I think this is a failed, lame duck president who has cemented his legacy in disgrace.
All right, so that was John.
The gentlelady yields the chair.
That was John
Ms.
Ossoff.
Fletcher for her 5 minutes of questioning.
John Ossoff bringing the facts right there. All right, let's move on to another one. Let's see what's up with Mark Kelly.
With that, we're
I had to do.
All right, so this came out Sunday morning as well. So this is Senator Mark Kelly right here.
Courage can.
It's titled Senator Mark Kelly and Young.
That's the title of a new book on veterans in Congress who have shown courage both on and off the battlefield. Author Ry Barcott profiled 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats who he says have the courage to meet the moment. We spoke with Ry, Senator Mark Kelly, and Senator Todd Young about how they are trying to bridge the divide and fix our broken politics. You are recruiting and supporting veterans who want to run for office, who meet certain criteria. Again, it's bipartisan, it's not ideological. Because you believe, and you believe there's evidence that military veterans are more likely to show the kind of political courage and also to cross party lines.
That's exactly right. So With Honor has helped support over 100 veterans. There are about 50 that are currently in Congress, and they take a pledge to serve with integrity, civility, and courage, including the courage to work across party lines, not necessarily agree with every policy, but to maintain that trust to address matters that really are important to the country.
Senator Young, you served in the Marines. How does that service inform what you do here? It's a very different kind of courage.
It is. This sort of courage, in some respects, is one that's less familiar to many people. It's the courage to be misunderstood by people you respect and love and whose values you share on difficult issues. It's the courage to do unpopular things and to be held to account or to be able to persuade people. So there's uncertainty and risk associated with those sorts of things. But I feel like that sort of courage, which is emphasized in military service, is necessary in order to serve the common good in divided times. People don't send us here to be influencers. They don't send us here to make political statements. But in the end, they send us here to solve hard problems, working with people who don't always see the world the same way we do.
The argument that the book makes is that, again, courage and civility will save us. But doesn't political courage often look uncivil? I mean, you need to stand up. You need to go up against the prevailing view. You need to maybe stand up against somebody in your own party.
You also have to do stuff that also might not be in your own personal best interest.
Yeah.
At times in this job in the United States Senate, you have to take stands that you know are the right thing for the nation, that moves us forward in a positive way, but could be politically harmful to you and your career. That's hard for some folks.
Well, let's get to something uncomfortable here. Senator Young, what was your reaction when President of the United States accused Senator Kelly of sedition, punishable by death, when the Secretary of Defense tried to punish him?
I'm glad you asked.
Oh yeah, Donald Trump tried to charge Mark Kelly with sedition, punishable by death. That's crazy.
He made a video telling the message that people shouldn't, service members shouldn't obey unlawful orders.
So as Mark can share with you, my first reaction was to text Mark and engage in a dialogue that very morning. And we had an exchange back and forth, an exchange which I will keep private about what I should do, how I should respond, where this led, and so forth. And so it demonstrates that it's really important to develop trust among your colleagues and solidarity, even during what I know was a difficult time for Mark. I like to think.
How are we nuts? Trump was trying to, execute a senator, for exercising their First Amendment right. That's nuts right there.
Because we've developed that partnership, it leads to constructive action on things like shipbuilding. These are difficult times. They're difficult times.
Can I just press you for a second? It seemed like a pretty outrageous thing. The President of the United States suggesting that this senator next to you could be put to death for something he said. And there wasn't much of an outcry among Republicans in Congress over that. It was kind of like,
No, it does lead to a larger question, which is, why am I here, Jonathan?
yeah,
Am I here to hold forth every time I have a concern about utterances or even actions, but render myself unable then to work on broader initiatives that are important to my constituents on behalf of my constituents in the country, or am I here to narrate a presidency? There are times when one must speak up when you feel strongly about things. That was a case when one could fairly say that should have been the singular moment. But just keep in mind that there are trade-offs, and this gets back to what Mark was talking about.
Mark Kelly didn't even do anything treasonous, though. He just stated like some facts.
Well, this job to navigate the shoals and assess, the moral calculus of the moment and assess when you should go to the wall, so to speak.
John, but I had one of my colleagues, who I won't mention who it was, but said, "Hey, this is a food fight. When this turns into a knife fight, I will say something."
yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. Sometimes this feels like a knife fight for me. I've been to.
I mean, when the president of the United States is saying you could be put to death.
Well, also when you find out that they're in front of a grand jury. And
Right.
by the way, they don't
Tried to indict you and failed.
Yes, yeah, for seditious conspiracy.
Yes.
Let me add this. I've had conversations with the White House
Yeah.
since this episode played out in a very public way. And the question was, naturally, we've been working on this shipbuilding initiative. Is it going to be a problem that I'm working with Senator Kelly in this initiative, because
Yeah.
we're investing a lot of time and energy on this? And the answer was no. No, we think it's important that ships be built. We welcome their.
Oh man, J.D. Vance, Trump 2028, that they'll get swept right out of the elections. They don't stand a chance. He has like a 20% approval rating, and J.D. Vance is just not even qualified.
So
Efforts, your
we'll work
bipartisan
with the
efforts.
guy that we're accusing of seditious conspiracy.
And so it is complicated. There's no question.
Well, you got to compartmentalize
That's right.
things. We're all adults. We understand the complexities of our own individual politics, and certainly how complex it is, especially for Republicans with this administration in particular. It's not. It's really not. I'd say in this situation, it's easier to be in the minority.
Yeah.
To be in the majority and the leader of your party is, fair to say, very unconventional about how he approaches this job. It is very complicated for them.
Well, look, you, as a newly minted senator, took on the president of your own party over immigration.
Yeah.
I mean, you were barely in the Senate.
Right.
And it was an unpopular view. I mean, you write about it in the book.
Yeah, and he.
Yeah, I feel you, Trevor. Even these next 4 months until the midterms seem so far away. But yeah, 4 months will go by fast, but
Created or responsible for, I think, is really fair to say.
Yeah.
I think it's also fair to say created a crisis at the southern border.
Biden did, with how he handled the.
The Biden administration did a bad job at the border. Now, I am a border senator. I represent the state of Arizona, and this was affecting my constituents more than it was affecting, let's say, Dots in Indiana. So, yes, I wound up in a situation with them where I had to do some.
Well, for starters, Chris Scully. For starters, Chris Scully will have cheaper gas and cheaper groceries.
Popular things, and I think unpopular things for being a Democrat.
Right. And you took heat, but how hard is it in this administration, Senator, to take a stand against this president?
Well, I think it's harder.
I mean, you've seen two of your colleagues lose primaries, 2 sitting senators lose primaries. Because the president of the United States didn't support their opponent.
Well, in a sense, you can't fault the president for using the leverage he has to affect the agenda he was elected to implement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, during the Biden administration, we were all eating steak and lobster. Now during Trump, we got like RFK Jr. liver and screwworm.
He is a master of social media. He has more loyal political followers than I've ever encountered in political life, and he's used those. We've never seen a president have those tools, have that sort of leverage against Congress before in my lifetime. And so, does it require a more sophisticated, more nimble sort of public leadership? I think it does. Yes, but
I have all my gas receipts from the Biden administration. It averaged like $3 a gallon. Under Trump, it's $6 a gallon.
Absolves myself or any of my colleagues, Republican or Democrat, from the agency we have. We still need to sacrifice when we feel like the common good can be advanced through personal sacrifice. We still need to cast principled votes and work on ambitious projects and make those arguments. And I've attempted to do that.
How does this all look at America 250, which the celebrations itself are being politicized?
We are clearly very divided.
Yeah.
Americans are not optimistic at this point. Congress is deeply
Trump just recently said that he loves inflation.
Unpopular. My view on this, and I'm sure Todd might disagree, is that we have a president that looks at every opportunity, not as an opportunity to bring the country together, but to further divide us. And even this 250th celebration, this is really an opportunity to think about like the history of our country and all the great things we've done, all the innovation. But what's going to happen on July 4th?
Yeah,
we're going to have a rally.
Well, Mark was kind to recognize that I would have a different perspective, and he's not wrong. I do have a different perspective. I think that lets our country off a little too easy. I think the reason we're so divided right now, and the reason we have a government that we're unhappy with, is because the American people have elected the current crop of senators, of congressmen, the president, of the president, all of us. And they haven't demanded more of us. I mean, really, this is in the American.
Okay, Chris, way to move the goalpost.
Hands. You ask about the 250th. This is an experiment. It is a fragile experiment, and it only exists if the American people take command of this country, and if they have challenges with the way we're being led, then put people in office that can do a better job. So it's in the American people's hands.
All right, so that was an interview with Mark Kelly. All right, let's move on. That was interesting. But yeah, that's crazy. Trump tried to execute Mark Kelly. That's insane. Just for exercising his First Amendment right. All right, let's check this out. This looks pretty interesting. I don't know who this is, but the title caught my eye.
Gentlelady.
All right, this is from some hearing, and I don't know what hearing this is from. But this is titled, Lizzie Fletcher Flips the Script on GOP Hearing on Fraud when she calls out Trump's corruption. So this lady's about to call out all of Trump's corruption. Let's see what she has to say.
The chair now recognizes Ms. Fletcher for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman Joyce, and thank you to our witnesses for your time here today. Fraud is a genuine problem in federal programs, including in Medicaid. That is why Congress and many past administrations have worked to pass laws and develop procedures to investigate, document, and remedy it. And federal law has well-developed procedures for how agencies must address fraud. And that includes requirements that agencies identify a credible basis for suspecting fraud before pausing funds, provide notice and an opportunity to be heard, impose penalties that are proportionate to their findings. They are tools that many administrations have used of both parties for many, many years. In fact, under President George W. Bush, there was a Medicare fraud strike force that charged thousands of defendants and recovered tens of billions of dollars, doing it the right way. And that's the key here. This issue is not new, but this is the third subcommittee hearing that we have had in this Congress on Medicaid fraud in state programs. And we have not had hearings on so many other areas in the government where fraud is not only possible, but appears to be happening right in front of our eyes. So one of them, I think, appears to be the Trump administration's claim of waste, fraud, and abuse indiscriminately to cut funds from states and from programs that it doesn't like or it doesn't understand. We don't need to look a lot further than DOJ's cuts to the screwworm research programs to see that when they don't understand what the government's doing, they would cut it. Or cutting funds and using these claims because it appears to them that it benefits their perceived political opponents. That is what is going on here. And this Congress has been a willing partner in that effort, repeating waste, fraud, and abuse ad nauseum to justify cutting healthcare funding and food assistance, taking care away from people who are sick, and taking food away from people who are hungry. And, the purported concerns about waste, fraud, and abuse that we keep hearing are really belied by the facts of the last year and a half. President Trump has pardoned, according to the New York Times, at least 70 allies, donors, and other people who have been convicted of fraud, including convicted of defrauding the United States government through Medicaid fraud. The president is pardoning them. People who defrauded the United States and took away the very services that we've been hearing about throughout this hearing from the people who were gathered in this room who deserve to receive them. The president is pardoning those people. And we also see not only has that increased since the first term, there have been nearly 36 pardons and commutations of people who've been accused of fraud. And of course, this administration has dismantled the agencies and the organizations that are designed and that have been created to investigate fraud and to root it out. For example, the 20 inspectors general that President Trump fired or demoted that identified more than $50 billion in waste and abuse in the 2024 fiscal year. These things don't add up with the stated purpose of rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. Don't be fooled about what is going on in this administration and what is going on in this Congress. We know that hundreds of billions of dollars in funding for people across this country flows from the federal government to the states through programs like Medicaid and SNAP. And we know that by invoking fraud as a grounds for freezing states' funds, this administration is extracting its retribution against its perceived enemies. Do not be fooled by it, and don't be used by it, and don't look away from the other waste, fraud, and abuse that is happening before our eyes. Thank you, and I yield back.
Wow, that lady, Miss Fletcher from Texas, coming through with a powerful speech calling out Donald Trump and all his waste, fraud, and abuse. All right, let's move on. Let's go see what else we got. All right, we already watched that. We already checked that out. All right, what the hell? Let's check out this Obama interview. All right, this is Obama right here from yesterday morning. I haven't seen this yet, so this should be good. Hang on, let me figure this out. All right.
The success of this experiment was never a given.
At a moment when American democracy can feel fragile.
We are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights.
A celebration of civic engagement on the south side of Chicago. The Obama Presidential Center is finally open. And the man, it is...
Oh yeah, his grand opening for his new library? That was awesome. He had all the good musical acts there.
Is Rick.
Donald Trump, Milli Vanilli canceled on Trump. So did Vanilla Ice.
I am no different than you. In you, I see the same talent, the same possibility, and I want you to see it too.
His record, his dreams, the state of our country now. Welcome to Hope Comes Home, the President Obama interview. Hello there, I'm Michelle Norris. We're glad you're here for this hour of Hope Comes Home, the President Obama interview. The Obama Presidential Center opened on June 19th. Juneteenth on the south side of Chicago. The Obamas wanted this place to be a very different experience from any other presidential library that came before it. And it is.
We designed the center not to be some lifeless mausoleum. I am too young for that. We wanted it to be a vibrant, living celebration of community where we can learn together and share the joys of art and music and sport and play. Because
what happened? The Chicago Bears moved out of town? Where did they go?
Moments that we're reminded of our common humanity.
Already in the early days of its opening, we're seeing the effect this place has on the people who come here. The first thing you notice is joy. The kind of happy...
I'm going to forward it a little bit to when the interview starts. I think here's where it starts.
Yeah.
Really almost 12 now, right?
let me think. So you start thinking about this in your last year in office.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be 2016. So that was 10 years ago when you're starting to conceive of it. And that's when you start thinking about selecting the site and the architects and so forth.
When you started to think about it, was it? Some people have said it's almost, and now I've got to do this. It's almost like a burden. Did it feel like?
It didn't feel like a burden, but it felt like a distraction because at the time you're still working on presidential stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you delegate a bunch of decisions and say, I'll worry about that later. But look, it's been a long journey. You had COVID in between, which obviously threw off schedules and budgets in all kinds of ways. We literally...
Sounds like a lot of MAGA cult members suffer from something called, what is it called? Obama derangement syndrome, ODS. MAGA cult members be suffering from some ODS.
Construction, and then suddenly COVID hits.
Mm-hmm.
And, that changed things a lot. We're not alone in that. And the great thing about it, though, was I think there was a consistency of vision on what we were trying to accomplish with the center. That didn't vary much. Michelle and I had a very clear sense that we wanted this to be a place that would attract visitors from around the world, that would, record.
Donald Trump's over there blowing up innocent fishermen out of the water. And he blew up a kid's school full of kids, like they're injured kids.
Happened during my presidency, but that more than anything was a vital, alive, dynamic place for the South Side of Chicago and the city of Chicago for kids in the neighborhood, that it was going to be used. And that, I think, more than anything, shaped how we thought about what this thing would end up being.
You know, I think about kids in the neighborhood. You met with a group of young Black men.
Yeah.
You were seated in a circle in
Right.
room 208 of
Right.
Hyde Park Academy, right across the street
Right.
from the campus now. And it was an extraordinary conversation. You were very honest with them.
Right.
You talked about making the kind of boneheaded decisions that a lot of teenagers make.
Right.
You talked to them about experimenting with drugs. And it was so unusual that one of the kids said, "Wait, are you talking about yourself?"
Yeah.
And out of that meeting, we know that the My Brother's Keeper initiative was one of the things that grew out of that meeting, because
Right.
later that year you announced that.
Right.
But I wonder if that meeting has lived on inside you in other ways, because it happened right across the street from where you decided to build the campus. Did that animate how you thought about the location, the design, the programming, you know, the young people who live in an area that doesn't see this kind of shine and attention?
Well, the location, in part, was determined by the fact that this is the epicenter of my life in Chicago. Right? Within a 4 or 5 mile radius of that site. I first came to Chicago. I got my first apartment there. I met my wife there. My children were born there. My wife grew up there. Our wedding reception was there. I made my announcement for my first presidential, or for my first political campaign there. I taught law school there. So, you know, that was part of what made that site so attractive to us. But as you say, one of the things that I learned when I moved to Chicago, and one of the things that Michelle had firsthand experience with growing up in Chicago, was even though the South Side of Chicago runs on the lakefront just like the North Side of Chicago does, for a whole bunch of historical reasons, the parks, the open spaces, the public facilities in those communities were underinvested in relative to other neighborhoods in Chicago. And so for a long time, I would drive through Lincoln Park in the north side of Chicago, and you'd look around and there are people playing volleyball, and there are tennis courts, and there are kiosks, and there's programming and museums, and then Jackson Park, which was just as beautiful, was empty. Yeah. And that sent a message. And when I was organizing and when I was serving as a state legislator, I was always shocked when you'd hear stories from kids who would say, well, I've actually never gone to the lakefront.
Even though they lived on the south side. It was right there.
They lived in Englewood, but it's just, it felt foreign to them. Much less going to the Art Institute downtown. That did not feel like it belonged to them. And so part of me having those conversations at Hyde Park Academy, the high school right across the street from where the center is going to be, is in those conversations I said, I am no different than you. That's the message I wanted to send to them. I had some good breaks.
You know Trump's all jealous of Obama's new library. That thing looks nice.
My environment was more forgiving than yours.
Meanwhile, Trump has to take his name that he illegally put up at the Kennedy Center. And he's such a big baby, he had to put a tarp over it.
Same talent, the same possibility, and I want you to see it too. And so part of what I wanted the center to be is a physical manifestation of that message. I want them to start realizing, yeah, amazing art. That's part of my life. That belongs to me. The idea that, I could make my community better, my world better, and that's inside me. I want to see examples of that, and so we already had a few of those same high school kids come in to give us a little bit of a focus group, and they seemed like they're pretty comfortable. They seem pretty happy, and I'm hoping that continues.
Open door to them.
Open door to them.
More of our interview with President Barack Obama is coming up.
It's where things are going to be, and so we want to make sure we do this or that. The word.
Yeah, look at that. That's a nice looking building right there. That's his new library.
Wrapped around the top of the
speech from
tower.
Selma, the anniversary.
Is the anniversary of the Selma speech.
You are America, unconstrained by habit and convention, unencumbered by what is, because you're ready to seize what ought to be.
I've often said that may not be my very best speech, but it is most representative of what I believe. It captures my politics as well as anything. And it's been pretty consistent. This belief in an American story that begins with these amazing words, this declaration that we are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, but it was imperfect, and then we struggled to make that ideal real. And that has always stood in opposition with a different idea of America that is based on caste and privilege and excluding people. And
what do you mean? Trump illegally tore down the east wing of the White House, and he gave all the work, and he spread asbestos everywhere, and he illegally dumped all the rubble around the city, and he didn't pay the workers, and all the workers got asbestos. Don't forget about the Irish Brigade from the 80s. Trump's Irish Brigade from the 80s. He has a history of stiffing everyone that he does work for.
Dominating people. And those two contrasting stories about America, a lot of my speeches, a lot of my politics has been arguing this is the better story. Mm-hmm. And so I think it may seem as if right now the story told at the Presidential Center is a response to this particular moment. But actually, I think it's a response to what has always been there in America. It's that part of America that that says black people don't belong, or that says that women need to be in their place, and gay folks need to be in the closet, and poor people need to stop complaining. Because a handful of people are the ones who are creating the wealth, and they deserve to keep it. And we don't need to take care of the vulnerable, and we don't need to make public investments in our kids. That story's all.
Nah, she's not a man, but guess what? Malaria Trump is a Trumpstein escort.
Been there. And I think sometimes we get confused in thinking that these two stories are completely separate. They're intertwined, right? And which is why it's possible for me to be a great admirer of George Washington and also acknowledge he was a slaveholder. Mm-hmm. And that does not negate his greatness. It simply acknowledges that there's a profound, deep flaw in these founding fathers who were also geniuses and gave us these tools. And which is true of all of us, right? It's true of every president. It's that we're this mixed bag. We got contradictions and embody the country's contradictions. And so I do think that what's striking is right now we've got a president in the White House who seems to have embraced and embodied, in a way we haven't seen in a very long time, this other story. And maybe
Does that make your story more important or more?
I don't know if it makes it more important, but I am glad that we are planting a flag, that we are hopefully creating a repository, a vessel through which people can be reminded of this better story. Now, I think ultimately, a museum, a presidential center, even one that is, engaging in ongoing work, doesn't replace actual activism. It doesn't. The best reminder of our best story is what happened in your hometown in Minneapolis a while back, of neighbors looking after neighbors. The best reminder is when you see folks around the country who are looking out for each other and fighting the good fight to, make sure that people have health care, make sure that, opportunity is fairly shared. Maybe a way to think about the presidential center and what at least we tried to create is some touchstones, some markers, some tools for people to just be reminded of, oh yeah, this is what our democracy is. This is who we are.
The idea of these two stories is interesting because America's been having an argument with itself.
Right.
We say one thing in our founding documents. We do something quite different in the way that we construct society.
Right.
And the argument that you're talking about and the stories that you're talking about, the exclusion of people of color, the exclusion of Black people, the exclusion of women, the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Yeah.
These are things that we know are true to the American story, but they don't always appear in presidential libraries.
Yeah.
Presidential libraries are usually shrines to a single man or a single administration, because all of our residents have been in.
Right.
So you decided to travel a different path. You decided to tell a different story in a different way so that you lean into that sort of thorny terrain around the founding contradictions. What was the thought process that led you there? And was there anyone that pushed back and tried to say, maybe we want to do this in a more traditional way? Because that is unusual.
Well, for folks who come to visit, the first thing they'll actually see is in the museum is a copy of the Declaration of Independence and a pretty long description and displays of the struggle to realize that ideal that's embodied in the Declaration. But hopefully what they'll also see, even when the exhibits are about my presidency, that there were people who disagreed with what I did. That there was a lot of unfinished business in my presidency.
Can you talk about that?
And that there was something like the Tea Party that emerges during my presidency, and it's useful for people to understand where does that come from. And look, it's the Obama Presidential Center, it's the Obama Museum is a tribute to my presidency. Frankly, I would probably have had even less of me. Maybe this is the academic in me that is more interested in folks getting a sense of history more broadly, and my presidency is just a chapter in that. This is like the civic teacher nerd in me. But I do think it's important to ground what happened during my presidency in this broader sweep of American history. And as I said before, this idea that, on the right, and you see this in the Trump administration, this idea that any suggestion or criticism that America was anything other than perfect is unpatriotic.
Is a suggestion that you hate your country.
Is a suggestion that you hate your country. Now, the flip side is, among progressives, sometimes there is this sense of, well, the only true narrative of America is this one of oppression and exclusion. And I reject both those views. I think it's complicated. As I said, I think it's possible to celebrate the founders and appreciate what they did, as well as look objectively and critically at how their values strayed very far from what they professed. I think it's possible to say that there were populists in rural America and the South and white America that really did believe in equality and justice, for white folks and helped to make progress in giving more people opportunity, and not ignore the fact that that was to the exclusion of others. And that's the kind of complexity that I hope people get a little bit of a sense of.
You want people to actually marinate in that when they visit your center.
And the reason is this, because I think when you understand the complexities of America and the contradictions of America, I don't think it makes you love it less. I think it makes you love it more. And I think it also makes you more resilient, because then during periods like we're in right now, where for a lot of folks.
Man, this is a really good interview, guys. We're only halfway through. It's so good. I'm gonna eat this edible right here. 50 milligrams. Little Rice Krispie treat.
It's crazy, and you feel despair and anger. That perspective allows you to then say, okay, we've gone through crazy periods like this before. We've gone through mean periods before. It fortifies you to say that, yes, this has been part of the journey that we're on.
We've been here before.
And there's no reason to suggest that we can't get through this one either.
We'll be right back.
I'm gonna fast forward it to when they come back. Or I think that's the end of his interview. Or no, they're back. All right, here we go. All right, they're back.
Let me ask you about the neighborhood. It's in the south side, on the south side, on Stony Island.
Right.
A street that is too often in the news for sometimes the wrong reasons.
Right.
What does it mean to place the center in a place that doesn't usually see this kind of investment?
Well, part of what we wanted to do is to recognize this is a big investment, and it can potentially help anchor and catalyze economic development and opportunities for communities that oftentimes have been left behind. Now,
Are you worried about displacement though? I mean,
Well,
Airbnb rates are going up, rents are going up. What do you have a plan to monitor or mitigate that the kinds of things that can happen with gentrification?
Well, look, this is always going to be, nobody's figured out this solution, right? Perfectly, which is, hey, these communities are underinvested in and they're poor and there aren't enough businesses and opportunities. And then people make investments in their businesses and opportunities. Hey, wait a minute, rents are going up and the tax base is going up and Airbnb rates go up. There's no way to make massive investments, bring about a bunch of tourism dollars and create greater interest and beautify communities and not also see some values rise. That's part of the purpose of it. The question is always, from our perspective, are we making sure that the people who are already there can get a piece of that rising tide? Can they access those opportunities? Which is why, in terms of employment at the Presidential Center, one of our biggest priorities was making sure that folks were able to not just apply for jobs, but actually get jobs and get trained for jobs. The young people who were living in those.
Yeah, that's crazy. Obama with his highly successful library museum, he's created more jobs than Trump has.
Are they going to be able to get internships and fellowships? And we're exposing them to the work that's being done and what opportunities they have as a consequence. The vendors, the cleaning crews, the contractors, all those folks, we've been very systematic about working with community groups in those communities and saying to them, this is yours, not just ours, and we want you to be a part of this. And I think there will, over time, be the kind of community improvement that is not just.
You know what I've noticed? Whenever I play like Obama or Michelle Obama, is the racist maggots. They just come out of the woodworks. Like, I've never sent so many racist maggots back to Jonestown. Oh my goodness.
And people from.
Just proves all the maggots, the only maggots that are left are either pedo protectors or just racist bigots. And they just prove my point.
But also lifting up folks from the inside. That's our hope.
That's hope. Okay. I want to do a speed.
Okay.
I want to pepper you with a few questions that will allow us to go inside the museum itself.
Okay.
I've heard that you've tested every chair in the building.
I'm not sure I've tested every chair, but I've tested a lot of them.
I just have this image of you running around sitting in all the chairs.
You know what? I'm a big believer in like stuff being comfortable. Because so much of the stuff inside is beautifully designed and meticulous and all this. My attitude was, but if a young mom with 3 kids that she's been dragging around to this museum and her feet hurt and she now is sitting down, is it comfortable? No matter how pretty it is, is she getting a break?
Were any of the chairs replaced?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Well,
okay.
I'm not going to say who, but there were a couple where I was all like, this looks great until you sit in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a hidden jewel in the museum, almost like an Easter egg, that you worry people will miss? Something that you're really proud of, but you're afraid that
this is actually not a hidden jewel. It is, but people may miss it. There is an entire room, a display that we're calling Democracy 101. That is away from some of the flashier.
It's kind of in a corner.
Oval Office. It's in a corner, and it just gives people sort of a primer on the Constitution and the First Amendment, and I'm really proud of that. I'm hoping people go through that because I think I worked pretty closely with the exhibit designers in creating a space where a layperson who's not, studying this stuff all the time can just kind of go in and.
Oh yeah, exactly, JFO. They're like Pee Wee Herman. Like, I know what you are, but what am I?
The sense of, all right, I have a pretty good idea about what all these arguments are about, and I'm hoping that especially kids, but adults as well, take that in because I think it's done really well.
Now that you said it.
Hey, what up, Aloha Kitty? Checking out this Obama interview that he did Sunday morning.
Well, they're actually going to look for it. What is the piece of art that just knocks you out every time you see it?
I mean, I'm a little biased because he's a friend of mine, but Mark Bradford's piece that essentially ascends from the bottom.
Damn, that looks nice right there. Yeah, I want to go to I want to go there. I'm gonna try to go there this summer. Check it out.
Of the museum tower, about 3-4 stories when you factor in how high each story is magnificent, and it depicts Chicago.
Oh yeah, I'm up a little later than usual because this Obama interview's got me hooked. So it's a good one. There's still about 10 minutes left to go.
And in fact, the very portion of Chicago in which the center is situated in an imaginative, abstract way, it's spectacular. But look, all of the art is hard to beat.
That was an unfair question.
It was a very unfair question because now I'm starting to think about Julie Moretto's stained glass on the other side of the building. Some of the pieces that have just recently been put in. I'm going to stop naming them because if I leave somebody out, people are going to feel neglected.
That's actually probably smart. Diplomatic move. There is a restaurant on site.
Yes.
Named for Tafari Campbell.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Who you knew.
Well, yes, I knew, and miss him dearly.
Yes.
Wonderful person who was your personal chef for many years. Man, could he cook?
He could.
I mean,
he was the best.
He was special.
Yeah.
And there is a restaurant that serves wonderful food. What is your favorite dish at Tafari's Kitchen?
I have to say, it's actually the chili. I can't give Tafari credit for this one because this is based on my own chili recipe, so I may be a little bit biased.
People are like, wait, he cooks?
Well, not anymore.
Okay.
But there was a time, and it's pretty good chili.
Really?
With some cornbread with it.
Okay. All right.
I give it 2 thumbs up.
Okay. What kind of beans do you use?
You know what? I'm gonna let you go ahead.
Okay, you have to try
Traditionally, I'm a kidney bean guy, but check it out.
Okay.
See what you think.
I will do that. Favorite book in the new library?
Must be Becoming.
Smart answer.
What are you talking about?
Of course. Critics have called the Affordable Care Act Obamacare, and it was meant to be a sort of derisive name, and you embrace it. Yeah, I did that. So they're calling this the main building the Obamalist. Will you embrace that too?
Absolutely, that's fine. I think that what I'm interested in is seeing how people respond when they visit. I appreciate architecture enough to know that it'll be 20 years before we have a sense of how the architecture fits into people's imaginations and how whether it lasts or not. But what you can know right away is that people enjoy being there, right? And if, as it seems so far, they do, if people feel excited by the space and inspired by the space and it's usable and it's fun and kids are in the playground and folks who are going through the museum are absorbing good energy and feel like, you know what, maybe I can go out there and do something too. And they get to the sky room, they look around and see a panorama of Chicago and their own neighborhood that they've never seen before. And community groups are having meetings there, and folks are using a recording studio to film their own podcasts or make their own videos, and kids are sitting in that public library and reading and excited about reading. If all that stuff's happening, then we will have achieved what we're trying to achieve.
All right, that's the end of the Obama interview right there, guys. All right, it's been stimulating, folks, but I'm going to hit the hay. Hey, thanks for everyone that voted. It looks like it's another blue wave tsunami. Is Donald Trump trying to cheat in the elections? And a whopping 59% said yes. So yeah, make sure everyone goes out there and votes out every single MAGA Trumplet turd. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, and catch you guys all later. Hope you guys all have a good Monday start to your week. Later, Sim Racing. Good to see you again. Catch you guys all later. Later, JFO. Peace out. All right, you guys.